At Intel India, we are committed to RISE, accelerating the adoption of responsible, inclusive and sustainable practices in our operations, supply chain, industry and society. Under the Intel India Sustainability Program, we pursue new ways to reduce emissions, conserve energy, recycle water and adopt renewable energy. Our metric-based dashboard measures initiatives across 7 vectors. Intel's first ever sustainability lab is a testing and certification unit to accelerate carbon-efficient engineering and responsible sourcing of minerals and raw materials. 70% plus of energy needs of Intel India are met through alternative energy sources. Intel is the first organization in India to set up a solid oxide fuel cell energy unit that displaces dependency on grid power. Solar panels meet 100% of our kitchen's cooling needs. All our buildings are LEED certified. Our robust waste management system enables generation of 3 tons of biogas through food waste alone. 15,000 plus sensors optimize power and temperature. Interactive walkway converts footsteps into off-grid electrical power. We use retreated water extensively on site. Off-site, we have rejuvenated 2 lakes in Bangalore with expected restoration of 100 million gallons of water per annum. A third of our employees contributed 100,000 volunteering hours in the last 3 years for CSR activities. $25 million spent with diverse supply chain in 5 years. The first Intel India Sustainability Conclave in 2020 brought 60 plus organizations across industries together. In 2021, we had best practice sessions with 15 plus companies. Our efforts have won us recognitions. We are not resting on our laurels. Intel India recognizes the need to do more with greater urgency. And together, we can make a difference.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second edition of the Intel-Zinnov Sustainability Conclave. My name is Anavi Pandey, and I will be the MC for this event. It's a pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of Zinnov and Intel India. Let me kick off this event with a few facts and figures to impress on the audience here the urgent need to keep sustainability at the heart of your organization's vision. According to the latest report from the World Meteorological Organization, or the WMO, a disaster related to a weather, climate, or a water hazard has occurred every day on average over the past 50 years, killing 115 people and causing losses of approximately $202 million daily. Climate scientists' long warnings of severe impacts of climate change are near the horizon, made evident by the cascade of deadly extreme weather that we have seen the summer of 2021. Canada's heat dome phenomenon, the deadly floods in Europe and China, the wildfires in California. These recent events are the result of human activity, or rather, inactivity to curb these adversities by adopting a green approach. In response to these adversities, a leaders' summit led by the US was held in April this year, which included 40 world leaders to tackle climate crisis and encourage countries to galvanize their efforts towards this cause. This will be a key milestone in the upcoming United Nations Climate Change Conference, which will be held in November later this year. One of the most recognized trends to shape sustainability in the years to come is circular economy, which is the theme of today's event. Whilst there is no universally agreed upon definition of a circular economy, the 2019 United Nations Environment Assembly described it as a model in which products and materials are designed in such a way that can be reused, remanufactured, recycled, or recovered, and thus maintained in the economy for as long as possible. The Circularity Gap Report 2020 states that the world can maximize chances of avoiding dangerous climate change by moving to a circular economy. Yet, most governments barely consider circular economy measures and policies aimed at meeting the Paris Agreement target of limiting global warming to as close to 1.5 degrees Celsius. The United Nations Environment Division and the Global Environment Facility finds that the global economy is only 9% circular, just 9% of the 92.8 billion tons of minerals, fossil fuels, metals, and biomass that enter the economy are reused annually. A report by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation and the UNCTAD estimates that a circular economy trajectory could bring India annual benefits of close to $624 billion in 2050 and would also reduce negative externalities. For example, greenhouse gas emissions would be 44% lower in 2050 compared to the current development path. The key to an Atmanirbhar Bharat is sustainable growth. The government has been actively formulating policies and promoting projects to drive the country towards a circular economy. Rules such as plastic and e-waste management, construction and demolition waste management, metals recycling policy, etc., are aimed towards this move. The tools to shift from a linear to a circular economy are at our disposal. The key is to be collectively proactive in our processes, businesses, and societies to see the greener picture. With this context, I'd like to get started for the agenda for today. We begin with a welcome note, followed by 3 keynotes by representatives from Intel, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, and a think tank called the Clean Energy Access Network, followed by which we have a very interesting talk by an Indian startup and a keynote by Zinnov. We'll end the event with the panel discussion and a closing note. But before we get into the sessions really quickly, I'd like to take a moment to inform the attendees of the booths of some very interesting startups and organizations that we have in the virtual lobby. We encourage you to please visit these booths, look at some of the interesting work that organizations are doing around the sustainability theme. We also have a sustainability pledge wall, and we encourage you to show your commitment towards sustainability by penning down some of your pledges here. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first keynote speaker. In his current role, Gokul leads the global organization which is responsible for delivering validation platforms, reference designs, and system technologies for the client roadmap. He is also the author of 7 publications in the areas of software engineering, mobile, and semiconductor system design. I'd like to invite Gokul Subramanian, VP Client Computing Group and GM Client Platform and Systems from Intel India to deliver the welcome note for the day. Over to you, Gokul.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Intel-Zinnov Second Edition Sustainability Conclave 2021. Gives me immense pleasure to join you all today and as part of the welcome address. Without further ado, I want to talk a few things as we kick off the event today about technologies, tools, and innovation related to circular economy. This is the reality we are in. Today, more than 7.5% of our GDP in this part of the world is affected due to climate change. More than 40% of urban solid waste is getting created because of construction and demolition. The construction material that we use, 23% of them contribute to the emissions, and that's largely due to the manufacture and transportation of construction materials. And in the urban traffic, almost 20% of them are carrying that load, causing 50% emissions. Not to forget, e-waste, 49 megatons, which is equivalent to close to $63 billion per year, are getting into e-waste. And the reason for that is only 20% are collected and recycled. We live in an age where there is fashion everywhere, and little do we realize how much that contributes. Close to $460 billion per year of still usable wearable clothing hits the landfills. And when it comes close to our home, household and consumer goods, 80% of household items that we have are used less than once a month, and almost 80% of consumer goods either gets burnt or hits the landfill, and that's because of poor design. Welcome, this is the reality. Unfortunately, I have to start this way, but the bright spot is we have tremendous amount of possibility in front of us. It's appalling, yet the opportunity is big for us to know that the world economy has only 9.1% contribution from circular economy, which means there is a good chunk of 90% available for us to go make an impact. At the infrastructure level, almost 50% can be saved by doing compact urban development, which means new methods for roads, sewage, pipelines, things like that, and our infrastructure. Buildings and usage, while they are big, one of the studies has shown that close to 600 million pounds can be saved every year just by applying new models like peer-to-peer renting, office sharing, repurposing, and multi-purposing buildings. Consumer goods, almost $700 billion per year can be saved just through material savings. When you do all of this, the opportunity is tremendous. When it comes to income and jobs, close to $100 can be increased in salaries for every ton that's recycled and prevented from going to the landfill. More than 18 million green jobs can be created in energy production. And last but not the least, if we have to impact the environment positively, 80% of that impact can be coming only if and only we started at the design phase, not late in the game. Now, we're in a great inflection point where we today have a possibility to turn things around. Of course, we did a lot of things as a human race in the last many decades and centuries to be at the forefront of development and where we are now. And now is the time for us to kind of bring it to action, to figure out what are the better ways to do it and how this can help us achieve the sustainability and the climate change impacts that we are seeing today. Now, when you talk about sustainability and climate change, there is a variety of things that goes into it. You know, it's almost an alphabet or an acronym or a word soup out there. But what's very important, what's fundamental, and what's most scalable is the circular economy. And that's the most important topic we're going to talk in this conclave for the next few hours and the days to come. So when you look at circular economy itself, there are many things that influence a circular economy, from process, design, innovation, technology, tools, and the business models. I'm going to try and touch a few of those as we kick off event from here on. Now, this is close to our heart. We are a tech hub. We are a technology center here in Bangalore and rest of the world. We are tech heads talking about this. This is where we are today. We use a lot of material to manufacture what we need. We use them as products, services, and we give it out, and then it gets disposed and wasted. This is an absolute fantastic travel from the beginning to the end of the supply chain just once, and it gets into a take, make, use, and throw kind of a model. This is what we all know as the linear model. Something that we have done really well, something we have scaled really well, but the end result at the farthest end of this slide doesn't look good. There are big disposals and large amount of waste and rubbish that's getting collected. Now let's see what we can do. From there on, if we could spend more time to make the product longevity better, make sure that the products that we build can serve its purpose and be usable and desirable to our users for a longer period of time, it can certainly reduce the dispose and waste. because you've prevented that much longer from it getting thrown out. So that's number one, as to how can you increase the product longevity. And the second one is, as the project longevity starts to erode, is there a way for us to restore and repair so that you can bring it back and enhance the usability of the product without it having to hit the dispose and waste part soon? So that's another aspect of how can you restore and repair. And the third one is, if we did all of that, we increase the product longevity and we are really finding ways to repair, can we also find a way at the end of the life cycle, before it goes into the waste, can we reclaim the parts so that we can bring it back into the manufacturing cycle and bring better usage to the products? That's the next aspect. Now, you can do all of this, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the intent to start with the design such that you can reclaim, you can improve the longevity of the product, you can repair and make that loop going through, you don't achieve circularity. So design for circularity becomes a fundamental part. And when you design really well, not only do you increase the product longevity, you also find other uses. And that's why the users become more. It need not be the same user, it could be different user. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So first and foremost is, how can we bring a design for circularity mindset rather than go at the end of the food chain and try to do as much as we can, versus can we do that right at the beginning so that the flow becomes more effective? If you look at what's happening today in the innovation space, the opportunity is already being looked at from a circularity standpoint. And there are some very inspiring examples that we already have in various industries. In the appliance space, there are companies that are putting home appliances that are repairable, that you can rent, that you can refurbish. You have the fashion industry that is looking at how they can recall old products, case in point like jeans, and how you can make them more easily bringing it back into the supply chain to build a new set of products. Keep in mind, the clothing industry is by far one of the biggest usage of water and other natural resources. And there are some breakthroughs in the fashion industry, how they've made fashion circular. We're seeing examples in the furniture where people are renting furniture, people are building new furniture from the old ones and still bringing new products out. Construction is another great example. Modular construction, materials that are being used for construction, compact urban development that's making it more circular. On the essential products, things that we use on a day-to-day basis, things that we dispose of and hit the landfills, there are examples where even diapers are being made out of material such that they can be disposed in a manner that it can decompose and have a way for it to not have the contamination that it has otherwise. Lighting industry has done something interesting where they've made lighting as a service, where you not only get your enterprise and home lighting, where you put the light fittings, but you can also service it, repair it, and refresh it as you go along. There is also a growing industry where materials are looked at in terms of how materials in the supply chain can be used, can be put in a dashboard to see their longevity, how they can be quickly serviced, and where other industries can use from the material supply chain database to bring the circularity. And of course, now, last but not the least, the computing industry. There are a lot of efforts happening today on how to make computing modular, how you can refurbish, how you can repair and reclaim, and use computing such that it can help the circular economy. So there are innovations that are happening as we speak, and this is a great time for us to kind of dial that up. From a technology standpoint, it's needless to say, we are at the best time in our history to have the kind of technology boom that we see. And of course, there is a variety of technology that everybody is aware of, from AI to analytics to 5G and IoT and blockchain. The key question to ask is, are we applying those technologies for circularity? There is no dearth of technology, but we need some creativity, we need some application where these technologies can really help in helping the circular economy. A good example is through analytics, finding the environment anomalies and vulnerabilities and risks ahead of time, using some really good AI algorithms to be able to apply them in models so that we can optimize consumption ahead of time when we know something is happening, as well as prevent certain aspects downstream. 5G gives us great connectivity to be able to get all of this data from a variety of sensors and internet of devices that's out there to collect the real-time aspects of how things are working, when they need to be repaired, predicting repairability, predicting certain aspects of how the device or the industrial equipments are working, and then bringing it back such that it's serviceable. And of course, blockchain, given the potential of the technology, can bring transparency to track the resources in a manner you can get the usage and the transactions available to make meaningful decisions. Like I said, we have all the technology that we need. What we need is our will and conviction to apply it to circular economy. Moving further, tools and software is a critical aspect also that plays into the circular economy. There are a variety of things that are getting measured. If we can't measure, we don't know where we stand, we don't know how good or bad we are doing, and we cannot intervene. Starting from carbon footprint to environmental aspects, life cycle, registry of what a product has in terms of both Energy Star or EPEAT, so that to make the consumer and the production houses to be more aware of environment makes it compelling so that the mindset changes amongst both the manufacturers and the users, so that we can get into a point where we are being more aware of what's happening, the kind of products we buy, the kind of usage models that we can apply. You can even have websites when you are going and buying something that can talk about the kind of energy saving that's happening on the backend web server, or the kind of product specs that are more eco-friendly or environment-friendly. These are some aspects that can really create more awareness and tools for us to intervene. Now, as I get to the technology, innovation, and tools piece, one of the key aspects is the repair, reuse, and recycle. Intel is a big manufacturing house in the semiconductor industry. And like any manufacturing house, we have the inventory, we build products, we have customers, we do ship these products out to our customers. And like any industry, we do have problems in the products that we give. And when we do find an issue and we diagnose it, when our customers find it, it comes back to us. We find ways to repair it and put it back into the production line. If we can't repair it in a manner that it can apply the quality of product that they want, we refurbish it and we find a way to get it into secondary markets. We also reclaim parts, and the reclaimed parts, where applicable and appropriate, we apply it to the other industries. This is the model that Intel really follows, and we've been able to get to less than 1% of our reclaimed products, reclaimed components going to, or materials going into the landfill, which is a significant part, and we are proud of it, and we continue to work on those. This is an important aspect that every manufacturing industry is already looking at. Now, I have the privilege to be part of Intel, and we build world-changing technology, and something that we take a lot of pride in. When we say world-changing technology, we mean technology that improves the lives of every person on the planet. And when we improve the lives of every person on the planet, we improve the planet. And it's important for us to keep sustainability, climate change, and what circular economy can help us do that. We're at a great moment in our career, life, professional aspect of what we're doing to be part of that journey. And I can't tell you how excited I am about being able to do something with sustainability in this conclave. And before I leave you off, there is one thought that comes to my mind, and this is from Robert Powell: leave it better than you found it. And I think we have an opportunity, being in this technology industry. We found a lot of things that was really cool. Can we do our part to make sure that we leave it better than what we found? And with that, I'd like to welcome you all to the Intel and Zinnov Sustainability Conclave 2021, a great forum A lot of good speakers and energizing topics that are here. Looking forward to those sessions, and I welcome you once again. Thank you. Over to you, Anavi.
Thank you, Gokul, for a talk that's definitely set the stage for today's event in a very apt fashion. Our next keynote speaker, in his current role, leads state and local government affairs, corporate volunteerism, and sustainability at the company's major manufacturing and office locations around the globe. In addition to overseeing regulatory and community engagement strategies, Todd directs Intel's global sustainability initiatives, including climate, energy, water, green buildings, and circular economy. I'd like to invite Todd Brady, Director, Global Public Affairs and Sustainability Corporate Services at Intel Corporation, to deliver his keynote. Over to you, Todd.
Hi, my name is Todd Brady with Intel Corporation, and it's an honor to be invited to speak to you today. My only regret is that I can't be there in person, but hopefully we can engage and interact virtually and discuss what I believe is a very important topic, which is how we as an ICT industry can reduce our sustainability footprint while enabling others to reduce theirs. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this, and hopefully it will trigger some thought and some ideas and further discussion as you can continue to meet throughout the day today. When we look at the world and what's going on around us, there is an opportunity that we've never seen before. The growth in data is astronomical. In fact, it's projected that the world will generate 175 zettabytes of data by the year 2025. That's growing the number of connected devices by up to 100 billion devices by the year 2030, connecting an additional 2.5 billion people. And that's a tremendous opportunity for our industry, a tremendous opportunity for growth. It will also present a tremendous opportunity to deliver significant environmental, social, as well as the economic benefits that will come. And I want to spend a little bit of time talking about that, about our vision of how we can grow as an industry and enable others to grow with us while reducing the world's environmental footprint. But before I get into that, let me introduce Intel. And this video does it much better than I could. So let's roll the video.
What do we mean when we say all you need is an idea and Intel inside? That in today's fast-moving, high-tech world, big ideas are powered by a one-of-a-kind partnership with Intel, because our customer-first approach is more than just a byline. From the moment we put the silicon in Silicon Valley, Intel has been accelerating the industry in big ways, setting a course for a new era of bold innovation. No one else is this obsessed with engineering a brighter future. That's why we're driving the industry's biggest inflection points, putting intelligence where it's needed most, in ways that only Intel can, with a multi-architecture approach that empowers our customers to transform their businesses from the inside out. We're democratizing AI in big ways, combining software and hardware to open up new possibilities. And we're moving that innovation around the world at lightning speeds with our advances in 5G. Collaborating with global operators and creating a new vision for networks of the future. We're taking intelligence and bringing it to the edge. Accelerating business outcomes with over 30,000 edge-to-cloud solution deployments. And we're taking that same innovation to the streets, deploying new technology and advanced data layers to make autonomous driving not only possible, but safe and seamless. Every day, we create world-changing technology that enriches the lives of every person on Earth. Making bold moves, because Intel has a unique portfolio breadth and depth, plus the global scale to serve as an unparalleled catalyst for our partners' biggest ambitions. So if you've got a big idea, let's go off and do something wonderful together.
Okay, I'd like to shift gears a little bit now and talk about the theme of carbon emissions, environmental footprint, and what I see as a challenge and a call to action for us as an industry. There are two areas where we're focused as Intel. The first one is around reducing our footprint. And we believe strongly that this is something that we need to do as a company and that we need to do as an industry. That is, how can we continue to grow our operations, our footprint around the world, our manufacturing, our supply chain, and do it in a way that we are reducing our environmental impact. That's an important call to action for us as an industry. With that then comes an opportunity, which is our products can be used to help others reduce their footprint. And we call that our handprint, the handprint of the ICT industry. And so I'd like to take a few minutes to walk through what we are doing as Intel to both reduce our footprint and further our handprint. And again, challenge us to think collectively how we can work collaboratively to do that together. A couple of years ago, we began to develop new sustainability goals. We were looking at a decade, 10 years ahead, and we said, where do we want to be 10 years from now? And what we developed was what we call a RISE strategy, or responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and enabling strategy. And in this strategy, we have set 10-year goals or decade-long goals for ourselves. And in each of these areas, responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and enabling, and across multiple aspects of our business, starting with our own operations and our supply chain, establishing goals there, expanding it then to technology industry initiatives, things that we can do with you, with others in our industry, and then looking even broader at big global challenges that we face, such as climate change, and asking ourselves, how can we collectively work together to solve these big global challenges? And again, I'd like to share just a very brief video with you to show some of the progress that we've made in our first year since we've launched and begun working on these goals. So I'd now like to spend just a little bit more time looking at two specific areas of our sustainability goals. The first one is related to our carbon footprint. The world's carbon emissions, the rising global temperatures are arguably the most critical environmental challenge that we face as humanity today. And so it's one that, as we look at our own operations, it's one that we're putting a lot of time and effort into reducing that footprint, and how can we further reduce that footprint as we grow. This is actually a journey that we started on a couple of decades ago to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions from our factories. In semiconductor manufacturing, there are gases that are used in the manufacturing process called perfluorocarbons. And as these are emitted into the atmosphere, they can stay in the atmosphere a long time and as a result have a significant global warming potential associated with their emissions. And so we've been working over the years to substitute those gases where possible, reduce the use of those gases, and then abate those gases, putting control devices so that the gases are not emitted, that we can break those down and destroy them and dispose of them in other manner. The result of that is that our process emissions are about 80% lower per chip. So we made significant progress over the past 2 decades in reducing that footprint. But there's still more we can do. because we're manufacturing and producing far more chips than we were 2 decades ago. The second area that we're focused on is renewable energy. And we have a goal of achieving 100% renewable energy by the year 2030. That's one of our RISE goals that I referenced earlier. This past year, we achieved over 80%, 82% to be exact, renewable energy, with 100% renewable energy in the US, in Europe, in Israel, and in Malaysia, where we have significant operations. But again, we have more work to do to get to that 100% goal. And it is another opportunity for us to work with others to get there. And then the third leg of this stool, if you will, around carbon footprint for our own operations is all around energy efficiency. We've invested heavily in technologies to improve our use of energy, to make us more energy efficient, whether that is energy efficient lighting, pumps, motors, boilers, chillers, all the facility systems that we have in these big manufacturing centers. All of those things have been areas where we've been investing. And a lot of those investments are smart investments, that is incorporating technology to using AI and other algorithms to monitor what's going on in our facilities and make real-time adjustments. As a result of those investments, not only have we seen our energy use on a per unit basis decline, but we've been able to realize significant cost savings, over $500 million cumulatively over the past 7 years. So this is an approach that we are implementing within our operations, but I would argue that all of us have an opportunity to look at our operations, whether that's a design center or a big manufacturing operation or an office building. There's opportunities everywhere for each of us to reduce our carbon footprint as an industry. And then related to our carbon footprint is our water usage. We're seeing all around the world the effects of climate change on the availability of water. Water is a critical resource for life. And so that's an area that as a semiconductor manufacturer, we use a lot of water. So how can we use less as we go forward, as we grow our business? And so we have a two-pronged strategy there. The first one is around reusing, recycling, and conserving as much water as we can in our operations. And we've recently invested in several state-of-the-art water reclaim facilities where we can route water from our manufacturing operations to these facilities where it can be treated and then reused in a number of different applications by Intel or even by some of our municipal partners. We have those now in place now in Israel. This last year, we just completed the construction and operation of a new reclaim facility in Oregon. And then this year, we just opened one in Arizona. And so heavy investment in this area by Intel. What that has resulted in is this past year, we were able to conserve over 7 billion gallons of water worldwide because of these and other investments that we have. But as we took a look at our footprint and took a step back and said, what are ultimately we trying to achieve? We decided to set a goal to be water positive. And what we mean by that is for every gallon or liter of water that we take in, can we return an equivalent liter or gallon back to the local community, the local watershed, where the water is ultimately going to be used by the community. And we set a goal to achieve that by 2030, to be water positive. In other words, we're sending back more water than what we're using. And to accomplish that, we've got to look beyond our own operations because we can only recycle our water so many times. We have evaporative losses that makes it then impossible to reach that goal. And so what we have begun doing is to invest in what we call water restoration projects, which are investments in our community with partners to put water back in local aquifers, streams, rivers, etc. We do that through working with agricultural partners, nonprofit groups, forest restoration initiatives. The list goes on and on. We've invested in over 30 of these projects now all around the world, and last year we were able to achieve 1.3 billion gallons of water restored as a result of that effort. And we are at about 90% of our goal of being 100% or more or water positive in our use of water. I've talked a little bit about what we're doing in our own operations. And I'm sure many of you have similar stories or similar initiatives that you're taking, and I think we have to continue to invest there. It's critical that that's the foundation of what we do here with sustainability. But I want to shift gears now to our handprint, or the opportunity that we have as an industry to use our products to help others reduce their carbon footprints, their environmental impact. There was a recent study done by an organization out of Europe called GESI, and the report is titled the Smarter 2030 report. And what this report concluded was that ICT has the potential to enable a 20% reduction in global CO2 emissions by the year 2030. And the way that we do that is by investing more in smart technologies, whether that's smart manufacturing, smart building, smart transportation, smart agriculture. The list goes on and on. And one might say, well, wait a minute, that's self-serving for the ICT industry. Of course you want to do that. You want to grow your products, you want to sell more products. But by doing that, aren't you just increasing your own carbon footprint? The answer to that, of course, is yes. As we produce more products, we are going to increase our carbon footprint. But what this report found was that for every increase in the ICT industry's carbon footprint, for every ton of additional CO2 emissions, because we are manufacturing, making more products, distributing them, etc., for every 1 ton of emissions created, there is the opportunity to reduce up to 10 tons through application of that technology in the world to reduce carbon emissions. So it's a 10-to-1 return on investment. There's no other investment like that out there, and a tremendous opportunity for our industry. So I want to give you 3 examples of things that we are doing at Intel, and things that we have invested in. So I'm not just talking theoretically. These are things that we've invested in, that we've seen the results that I'm talking about. The first one would be smart manufacturing. When you go into a modern semiconductor fab, what you see is small autonomous vehicles, if you will, zipping around the ceiling of the factory and moving the wafer from point A to point B. In fact, in our Hillsboro, Oregon, one of our state-of-the-art facilities there's more than 27 miles of track in our D1X factory, and 1,700 of these autonomous vehicles moving wafers all around the factory. And with that, everything is being monitored real time, over 5 billion data points a day that allow us to optimize that manufacturing process and allow us, therefore, to get more product out with equivalent energy usage in the factory. It allows us to be much more efficient. And so we're able to not only reduce our emissions by the smart manufacturing and the automation, but we are able to increase our output. So there are thousands of applications like this throughout the manufacturing sector. And if we were to fully implement those, there's an opportunity for almost another 3 gigatons of CO2 emission reduction. The second example I'd like to give you are buildings. Think of all the millions of buildings all around the world. And the opportunity here is about 2 gigatons of CO2 emission reductions if we were to make our buildings, our office buildings in which we sit, live, operate, more efficient. I wanted to share a couple of examples with you here. We have recently built new office buildings in India and in Israel. These office buildings are LEED Platinum buildings. We designed them from the ground up to be environmentally friendly. And one of the ways we did that was to make sure we were integrating technology, IoT type solutions into the building from the very start of the design all the way through construction. These buildings have thousands of sensors throughout that are monitoring real time what's going on within the building and can adjust lighting and air conditioning and heating and ventilation systems and whatnot real time to optimize that. And what we have found by doing that is we have seen a decrease in the amount of energy usage in these buildings. They use 30 to 50% less energy than a typical office building. So again, the opportunity is there, significant opportunity to use our industry's technology to reduce emissions, reduce costs of operating those buildings as well. The third and final example I just wanted to share with you here briefly is smart transportation. And in this space, there's over a 3.5 gigaton opportunity here if we can make transportation smarter. Think of all the gridlock, traffic gridlock that there is around the world. By making that smarter, more controlled, autonomous vehicles, you have increases in safety, fewer people injured, fewer lives taken. We have less congestion on our streets as we can optimize the flow of traffic and the flow of the vehicles. We have much more efficient movement, and we have lower emissions as many of these vehicles are also moving to electrical vehicles instead of the traditional internal combustion engines. And so again, another area that Intel is investing heavily in. We believe that this is not only something that people will want for convenience, for safety, for all the other reasons I mentioned, but in addition, it will also reduce the world's emissions and reduce the carbon footprint of the world as we move forward. So I hope I've inspired you to think a little bit about what this means for you and your company and your opportunity. And the call to action from me would be for all of us to focus on what can we do to make our own operations more efficient. We need to start in our own backyard, in our own business, and improve as we go forward. But then what opportunities are there for us as an industry to make the world more efficient? And I would argue, as you've seen from some of the examples, there's tremendous opportunity. And what that will require, in my opinion, is bold action by all of us to move forward. I firmly believe that this is a space where we can work together to benefit all of us, and not just us as an industry, but benefit society as a whole. So thank you. It's been a pleasure being here with you. And again, hopefully I can be there in person next year. We can continue this conversation and have more dialogue on this important subject. Thank you and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Todd, for that very encouraging and a very highly impactful talk. Stay tuned for our next keynote, Beyond 2050, Key Imperatives for a Circular Economy in Business. We'll be right back. Our next keynote speaker is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt for top-line growth. Federico combines an interest in understanding members' sustainability business drivers and an analytical approach to commerce. In his current role at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, Federico offers top-line growth expertise through the use of data-driven analytics. I'd like to invite Federico Merlo, Managing Director of Member Relations, Circular Economy, and Built Environment Programs at the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, to deliver his keynote. Federico, over to you.
So thank you, Anavi. This is Federico Merlo from WBCSD, the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. It's a real pleasure to be today with you at the Intel-Zinnov Sustainability Conclave. It is my pleasure to be with you today. What I will be sharing with you is some perspectives about sustainability movement worldwide and how they can be relevant for India. I will be especially focusing on circular economy as a way to contribute to some of the key imperatives that the world faces today. First, before we get started, just a couple of words of introduction for myself. I'm Federico Merlo. Actually, I've spent the majority of my professional career in business. in a multinational company in the field of chemicals. I had mostly commercial roles. And I work now since 2016 at WBCSD at the nexus, so at the connection between business and sustainability. That's what I'm passionate about. In fact, I believe firmly that, and I share that at WBCSD, that businesses have a very strong contribution that they can make towards making this world a better place. In fact, sustainable business is a major important business opportunity. According to the Sustainable Business Commission, many trillions of dollars of opportunities of GDP growth can be achieved by businesses on focusing on key sustainability opportunities. And today we'll be exploring some of them. A couple of words on WBCSD, just to show you these. We grouped together about 200 companies. We call them forward-thinking companies. The majority of these are shown here on the slide. You can see that these companies are often large, well-known companies. You will recognize many of the logos from your personal and professional experience. They come together at WBCSD to work on sustainability issues. They feel that WBCSD is the business platform and business-only platform where they can work together under the auspices of WBCSDs to address some of the world's most pressing needs. We run about 20 to 30 different projects that help them to collaborate and address business solutions. So in fact, you will see from my background and from the composition of WBCSD that actually we're no tree huggers. We're actually business people that try to make sure that more sustainable business become more successful. So let's begin to look at what specifically we're trying to achieve. So in terms of sustainability movement right now, the key imperatives that the world is facing are what businesses need to be focused on. And there are three key issues that businesses need to address. To make it sustainability simple, these three things are we need to address collectively climate emergency. We need to make sure that we restore nature. And the third thing is about social inequality. In fact, if I address them quickly, the three of them, the first one is an obvious one. Everyone knows that we're running to heat the world through our emissions by more than 1.5 degrees. We're on track to more like 3 or 4 degrees. And you can see the effects of that. We've had 2021 has been a year of real climate change and abnormal phenomena around the world. From extreme heat to extreme floodings. This is now obvious, and we need to address that climate emergencies by addressing our emissions. You can see that on the top right-hand chart that there are different scenarios, but we need to stop emissions get to net zero by 2050, and we need to halve the emissions by 2030. The second thing that we really need to do is to restore nature. We're depleting our resources. And in fact, you can see on the chart in the middle, on the right-hand side, that the biodiversity loss is enormous. We've lost 40% of the biodiversity that we have, and we run the risk of having literally millions of species that are eliminated from our planet. This is not just about green movement, but it can have and will have an effect on local economies. It will have effect on agriculture. It will have an effect on business. And then lastly, social inequality. This is something that it's not obvious, but certainly, it is becoming quite important. The top 1% of the world have captured 25% of the growth. We also managed to get a large number of people, millions of people, out of severe poverty, and that is positive. But what is suffering right now is that middle class, and in fact, their real income and their wealth has declined over time, and you can see on the bottom chart on the right-hand side. So those are the three imperatives that all businesses need to address. it needs to be addressed in a way that continues to have them successful. But as I said, the sustainability movement in addressing these three things can help businesses to become more successful as they do so. So this is part of what has come out of these three emergencies have been what has come out of what we call Vision 2050. This is a body of knowledge that has been developed by WBCSD members, about 50 members working with us over a period of 18 months in determining the vision towards 2050. But in addition to the three imperatives, there were different pathways that we have identified. In fact, if we have a common vision of having 9 billion people that live well within planetary boundaries by 2050, we have identified 9 different pathways. Look at them as things and services that our society really need to function. From energy to transportation, we need adequate living spaces. We need products and materials, and I'll come back to that specifically. Financial services, we need connectivity, water and sanitation. I know that in India, this is particularly important. And then the food, agribusiness and food need to be successful in providing nutrition that we need on a day-to-day basis. So out of these different pathways, normally companies associate themselves with one or more of these pathways. So of these things that we need to provide for people to live well within the planetary boundaries. And we need to do them in a way that provides and addresses some of the three imperatives that I have mentioned. Today, what I want to do is to focus specifically on, given the industry that you represent, that you are working in the audience, I would like to focus on particularly on the products and materials part, recognizing that the technology industry in India, I have visited Bangalore myself, and I know how the whole area of IT and technology is so key. And so you can look at it as not just in terms of the products and materials and the connectivity, but also as an enabler, as a key factor that will influence, in fact, the majority of these pathways in terms of how they contribute towards that common mission and vision that you see at the top of this chart. Now, with regards to specifically products and material, before I go there, one more thing. For each one of these pathways, Vision 2050 has identified a set of actions that businesses can take. So I strongly encourage you to go to the full report and look at that for yourself in terms of the things that businesses can do for each one of these pathways. There are 10 actions the businesses can take. So overall, with 9 pathways, there are 90 actions that businesses can really move forward with in terms of addressing some of the challenges. Let me specifically focus on products and materials for a second, because I know you're very keen to address those. And the way that we produce products and materials is going to be fundamental. I firmly believe that a circular economy is a key driver of producing sustainable products and materials in a way that really helps to address the 3 imperatives that we talked about. Now, for those who are not entirely familiar with the concept of circular models, let me just remind you, it's really about doing 3 things along your value chain. It's about reducing the amount of materials that we use. It's about reuse or extend the life cycle of the products or the services that you provide. And finally, to recycle them. So today, our society is mostly based on linear models. So we take natural resources from the earth, we use them, and then we dispose of them. The circular model is really looking at, how do we look at the 3 R's in terms of making sure that we develop different models to improve the intensity by means of which we actually produce the products and materials that we need. We need to decouple the growth of what we do and what we produce from the raw materials that we need to produce them. Different models exist, products as a service. So, the simple one is that, in the past, we strive to become owners of vehicles, of cars and mobilities. There is no reason to do that if you consider the mobility as a service as opposed to a product. There's all product life cycle extensions and take back. And I know that in India, this is, particularly in the informal economy, is a key driver. And then, resource recovery and circular supplies. These are all ways in which we can establish circular models. These are ways in which we can contribute towards the development of a new system that enables us to produce what we need in a more circular way. So decoupling that intensity from natural resources. And I know that India is particularly focused on circular economy. You have a program that has been set up, the Swachh Bharat. Circular models can be a way in which we can achieve and deliver Swachh Bharat. Now, how do we do that? Well, we advocate that it all starts with measurement. And so we have developed what we call circular transition indicators and provided a methodology and tools for companies to measure essentially how circular they are. And it's based on evaluating circular inflows and linear inflows and comparing them in within the company boundaries, and develop evaluations of circular outflows and linear outflows and compare them so that you can come up with a measurement of how circular your businesses really are. Now, this is important because it sets up a common standard way of doing it, and it enables you to identify where the opportunities for circular improvement really are. And then, of course, it goes together with an innovation and different business models in terms of how you can then move it forward. But what gets measured gets done. And so I encourage you to consider this as one of the first steps in terms of evaluating your circular progress. To help you with that, WBCSD has actually put together a tool that you can find online. It is free of charge. It's already currently used by over 20,000 companies or individuals that have already downloaded. There's a tool that enables you to do that, and it is used globally. So it is becoming the standard. And so I encourage you to access through the link this key transition indicators for you to be able to begin to start or to continue your journey on circular models by being able to measure the circularity of your operations. Now, let me just continue because in a way, circular models are one part of what we need to achieve to produce products and materials, but also many of the other products and services that I have outlined as key pathways. But, to succeed, there are what we call enablers that influence these systemic change that we need. And we have identified 4 key ones. And I just want to bring them up because a couple of them are fundamental to you, to your industry. Innovation technology is one of the key enablers. And here it's extremely important for the audience that we have today. In Bangalore, you have almost like the equivalent of the Silicon Valley in terms of innovation and technology. When I visited the area, I was astounded by the capability that exists in the country and the forward thinking that many of you provide in this area. And so I think that this is fundamental in terms of working out different models than what we have today and providing the platform for that evolution from a linear to more of a circular economy. The second enabler is finance and investment. And once again, here, I think that in your country, you have amazing capabilities in terms of creating channels for those investments to reach and to favor those particular models that decouple that growth from the use and the intensity and the raw materials that we require to provide the products and services that we need to function. Individual consumption. So this is basically you and I and in general consumers, how we consider products and what we need. Our consumption needs to move from a quantity type of consumption model to more of a quality type of consumption model. And so this is where sustainability shouldn't be considered as a sacrifice to profitability of businesses. It's the difference is that the quality will provide the element of better margins. So it's not necessarily about the volumes, but it's more about the way we consume and the quality of the services that we consume. And then lastly is the policy and regulations. So businesses do need a context in which the level playing field is provided by the regulators, by the lawmakers, to make sure that many of the changes, the systemic changes that we need, are actually favored and supported. So I bring these four up because often they're not evident systemic ingredients, systemic change ingredients, but you have the ability to influence and leverage, particularly in my view, on the first one, on the third, on the second one, and possibly influence the regulators in your country in terms of how they influence change. Now, the transformations that we need towards the vision of having 9 billion people living healthily within the boundaries of the planet by 2050 cannot happen without personal and collective leadership. And so this is, the type of personal drivers that we need. And your industry is fundamental to influence other industries. Is almost at the center of the mosaic of the whole economy in your country, but globally as well. And so we need your shared leadership in understanding the vision and be part of it. It's about taking action in terms of disruptive change. And the recommendation is that you drive disruptive change as opposed to letting the disruptive change happen to you. And then take accountable leadership. It's about measurement, and it's about making change and taking the risks of making those changes to the way you work and the way that your industry works. So I think at this time is probably a moment for a wrap up. So I just want to leave you with 5 key points that I want you to touch upon today. First is that sustainable business is good business. There's profitability, there's opportunities, there's growth that you can provide to your business, to your industry, and to your country. So it shouldn't be looked at as a sacrifice or as a compromise. I think that there is opportunities to grow your businesses and make them successful by being more sustainable. There are 3 imperatives that all businesses should be taking care of. One is climate, the climate emergency, reducing emissions and halving the emissions by 2030, which is only a few years away from now. Nature, preserving the biodiversity and avoiding the loss of that diversity. And finally, the inequality that we see becoming so evident in many countries and many geographies. Circular models can get us products and materials that contribute to the imperatives, and your industry is key in developing those models. The innovation and technology is a key enabler in getting those models underway and accepted and scaled to provide those effective circular loops. And then, my recommendation is to start by measuring and use the CTIs, the circular transition indicators, as a vehicle of understanding where you are today and developing your journey. Your leadership and your commitment is key of your industry and making sure that some of these transitions do happen. Now, with that, I want to stop here and hand it back to Anavi for the continuation of your work. And thank you very much for having me and for having the opportunity to share some of these thoughts with you.
Thank you, Federico, for your perspectives and insights. Certainly lots to resonate with and take away there. Our next keynote speaker is from the Clean Energy Access Network, abbreviated CLEAN, which is an industry accelerator representing 200 plus decentralized renewable energy organizations in India and is committed to advance clean energy integration for sustainable development in underserved communities. I'd like to invite Advait Joshi, CEO of the Clean Energy Access Network, to deliver his keynote talk. Advait, over to you.
Thanks, Anavi. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are listening to this from. I'm Advait Joshi. I lead a young organization called CLEAN. We are based in India. We are a network of about 200 odd social enterprises which work in bringing clean energy solutions to the underserved markets of India. And we were put together or founded by some incredible bunch of organizations, some of which you already probably know of, like Shakti Foundation, WWF, United Nations Foundation, CEW, the Climate Group, TERI, Selco Foundation, GIZ, Ashton, and so on and so forth. The main objective of setting up Clean was to make sure that we can become an industry body. We become an organization or platform which unifies, supports, and grows the decentralized renewable energy work in India. Now, most of our members work across different geographies in India, and they represent different kinds of technologies as well. So, some of the popular renewable energy solutions or off-grid solutions are solar PV, bioenergy, a small hydro, pico. But many of our clean organizations, member organizations, are also working in hybrid models. So, many of them are working specifically on how this energy is used for the development and addressing various social indicators. So that's a little bit about Clean. We basically at Clean we believe that the focus of decentralized renewable energy should not just be about how this energy gets generated. It is extremely important to look at how this energy is used to create sustainable value on ground. And hence, we work very closely with various policymakers, financial institutions, technology providers, innovators, and market developing organizations who work on creating a conducive ecosystem for decentralized renewable energy in India. Uh, with this in mind, Clean has worked on several national, state, and district level policy initiatives where our objective has been to make sure that any scheme, any policy, any subsidy, or any support program that is developed by the government, renewable energy or clean energy has to be a key component of it. It is instrumental in creating awareness for the benefit, not just from an environment or carbon reduction point of view, but also from the point of view of how sustainable returns it generates at the end of years. Clean also works across, like I mentioned, various technology providers and innovators to make sure that the product or the renewable energy based applications that are generated are more acceptable in for lending for financial institutions. They value or showcase the sustainable or carbon reduction that can be addressed as one of the risks that can get mitigated. Similarly, we also work on creating awareness in the market so that end users are able to see the value in what is there to offer from renewable energy spectrum. Um, so I guess you must be thinking about what is a decentralized renewable energy person doing in a conference on circular economy. Well, we have heard about various aspects of circular economy, especially in the current situation where the pandemic and I would say the daily threat of climate change has made us really think hard about circular economy in not just the dimensions of how we source our material, how we manufacture it, how we are servicing it, how we are at the end disposing it at the end of its life. Whether it is by reusing it, by recycling it, or repurposing it, or actually just reducing the demand for it in a way. If you look at it, renewable energy also comes in a very similar conversation, and it is multidimensional as well. Most of you probably look at decentralized renewable energy from a very specific perspectives. Most of us are familiar that decentralized renewable energy means solar lamps or solar lanterns, or it could be improved cook stoves. It could be charging stations. It could be televisions and fans or home equipments, home systems which are powered by renewable energy, be it solar, be it bioenergy or any other. Or it could be street lights. It could be, the hybrid wind systems that we set up on top of our roofs, or it could be run of the river kind of small pico hydro plants, which help farmers lift water from rivers for their, irrigation purposes. However, at Clean, over the last few years, we have realized that decentralized renewable energy is much broader. It is not just about domestic purpose of energy access. It's actually a value generating renewable energy source specifically for income generation or productive use. Look at solar pumps, which is a national level scheme under Kusum now. Look at the drying activity that happens via solar or biomass. sewing machines, or any textile-based applications, even as focused as pottery-based interventions or blacksmith-based interventions can be supported via decentralized renewable energy. And the reason that we are working in something like that is because we strongly believe that decentralized renewable energy plays a critical role in bringing sustainability in circular economy as well as energy democracy. Let me step into it a little bit more. We all know that coal or other fossil fuels cannot take us any further without creating sustainable and adverse negative impact on our lives. Hence, obviously, as a nation, as an individual, as a company, we all have decided to depend more on relatively cleaner energy solutions, be it natural gas or LPG, LNG, whatever we want to call it, right? Which has become a global commodity over the last few years. However, these energy solutions are not really circular in nature. They are not really sustainable in nature because they are produced somewhere else. In India's case, a large amount of natural gas is imported, which is produced elsewhere, maybe in other countries, but it is used over here, which increases our dependency on imports. It's not a bad solution. It's not a bad fuel either. It has actually helped India to remove many families from using traditional smoky wood-fired cooking solutions. LPG through the Ujjwala scheme has now really reached many far corners where smoke was a big problem for health issues through internal air pollution. So it's definitely not bad, but is it circular? Um, it's also not really affordable if I think about it. It's something that we are importing. It is something that is being accepted because there is a large amount of subsidy that it has to carry with it for acceptance. Maybe let me take a step into a house of a well-educated Indian villager. I'm talking about a well-educated and not really a literate. I'm talking about somebody who understands the value of sustainability, understands the value of health in their homes, understands the value of equity. So let's step into a house like that. Now, typically, when you go into such a house, you will see that there is a stove which is powered or supported by LPG. You'll often find a biogas plant as well, which is run on cow dung or gobar from the animals that they host. Similarly, you will probably see an improved cook stove, which uses far less amount of wood or basically depends on pellets or briquettes to really power and provide the heating and thermal energy that is required in this house. Now, compare a scenario like this into our homes. Most of us use probably only LPG at our homes. Some of us, very few of us, probably are dependent on induction cook stoves or electricity-based solutions. But we don't really keep three different types of solutions with us, right? Now we often think about improved cook stoves or pellet-based fired cooking only when we are in camping. So why this difference? Why this disparity in a way? Well, in most of the houses in India's rural demographies, you will see that energy, which is electricity as well as cooking or natural gas, are still unaffordable. They are still unreliable. While we may have 100% electrification, there are still pockets where the energy requirement is for more productive use or more intense use, more longer use. And hence you see three different types of cooking solutions. So typically an LPG is used for occasions, special occasions when let's say in-laws are coming, when some guests are in your house and you want to cook really good food for them. But at the same time, often biogas or improved cook stoves are used for other daily cooking purposes, including having a cultural alignment to it, which is having that tandoori feeling of the rotis that we see in many of these households. So that is the reason why you see three different types of cooking solutions available. Now, this is still a case where you are providing a more sustainable cooking solution in a household of an educated Indian villager. We all can imagine the situation that could be there in a household which does not understand some of these aspects and are still cooking on smoky traditional three-stone cook stoves, which are powered by wood fire. So how does this make it circular, right? So if you look at all of these solutions, the source or the raw material, except for LPG, is basically from the local communities. It is sourced from, let's say if you're in the hilly terrains of Uttarakhand, from the pine needles that you get available. Often many of the biogas is generated from the cow dung, which most of the rural village or farmer level communities have access to very easily. Uh, so, in a way, it's important to look at renewable energy from a circular angle, with keeping this at the context. This is not just about locally sourcing these energies. These energy solutions also create jobs at the last mile. They basically reduce the drudgery of a woman going into a forest or a wooded area, spending 2 to 3 hours just gathering firewood. So a lot of local economy can be developed using renewable energy or off-grid energy or decentralized renewable energy. Um, so in a way, what Clean really advocates and what we look at is that clean energy or decentralized renewable energy plays a very critical role, not just from reducing carbon emissions, but it actually is an enabler for various other SDGs. Through the clean cooking solution, you saw an example of how health plays an important role. You have seen that how it creates employability. It also creates strong amount of equality as well, apart from affordable and access to clean energy. Now let me step into another situation, which probably is very close to most of our hearts, something that all of us have experienced directly or indirectly in the last few months itself. With the pandemic raging and during the peak pandemic times, especially in India, most of us have been glued to either some kind of an app or a news portal, which has continuously showed us dashboards about where hospital beds are available, oxygen cylinders and concentrators availability. Now, I believe in one way, all of us have been lucky. We are lucky because for us, the choice was very easy. The choice was, if we need health attention, do we go to a hospital which is as far as, maybe we just have to walk to it? Or do we choose a hospital where we can just quickly drive, take our car over there? Or even in many cases, whether it is just easy to call for an ambulance from that healthcare facility so that it reaches sooner than you actually physically trying to go there by yourself. Now, teleport yourself into a rural community and think about a similar situation where the choice actually transforms into chance. You're looking at thinking about making decisions based on whether the nearest primary health center or a community health center is even manned by healthcare workers because it's late in the night. You don't have access to good energy or electricity. The next big question probably that comes to your mind is whether, if I need an oxygen concentrator, uh, will the energy that is available, sustain through your need of that oxygen cylinder? Will there be a sudden blackout and you lose power to the oxygen cylinder? Now, this is what we talk about when we are thinking about energy as a choice. In these scenarios, it's not a choice; it becomes a chance. Now, what do we do with this, right? So energy plays such a critical role in such situations. What do we do to solve this kind of a problem? Uh, if I have to just give you a more specific data on the healthcare conditions and energy nexus to it, is that 15% of India's population relies on primary health centers and community health centers as their first touch point. That's about 200 million of us who don't have access to electrified healthcare solutions. And If I think about how do we fix it, it doesn't take more than 600 crores, roughly about 0.6% of the energy and healthcare budgets of India for 2021. So that is why I keep going back and think about renewable energy or decentralized energy as a circular commodity, as a as a enabler to circular economy as well, because it is not just about how this energy gets created and specific to only the carbon emission reduction. It actually plays a strong enabler mechanism to bring multiple stakeholders together locally to make sure that the local community is more sustainable. So that is the role of decentralized renewable energy in general at a high level from a circular economy. Let me take a few more specific examples about how Clean, along with its members, have been trying to bring livelihood focused, in circularity into this particular picture. There are many communities in across India, right from the northeastern belt, hilly belt of Nagaland, Meghalaya, Manipur, Assam, in all of the 8 states. Similarly, we have a strong population of communities which focus on drying-based products in the eastern and western coast of India. Now, traditionally, they have been using, drying products for value-added, let's say cash crops by using traditional firewood-based drying. Now, if you're able to replace that with a solar or a biomass-based drying mechanism, what you're essentially doing is one, you're reducing the drudgery of going and finding that firewood, or you're also conserving the quality of the product that gets out of these drying solutions. And you're also creating a strong increase in income for these farmer organizations or SHGs because they are able to dry their products for a much longer time compared to a traditional wood-fired solution. That is one example. And I believe many of you have already been part of this. Many of you probably have taken flights where you have ordered the upma or the Maggi, or you've also probably tasted some of the dried fruits and vegetables in your morning cereals and breakfast items. Believe me, many of these products are today coming in from SHGs that are enabled by Clean members, where many of these products are dried using DRE-based solutions. And they are sort of creating a strong impact. Similarly, if I take an example of the dairy industry, where a large amount of financial gains or sustainability can happen when you have a large pool of cows or buffaloes or basically animals to sort of create milk or milk products from. What about the farmers which have maybe 2 or 5 or 20 cows, a small group which their livelihoods depend on? They have to rely on the grid electricity. They have to rely on when that electricity is accessible, so that they can actually use mechanized tools to sort of provide dairy products. If that electricity or energy is not available, it's a big loss for them. Now, renewable energy powered such solutions also play a key role in not just eliminating their dependence on diesel gensets, but also increase the health of animals. It increases the potential capacity of income, so that a dairy farmer is not limited only to provide milk in a better preserved manner, but they can also go ahead and think about creating products like butter out of it. Another example of a blacksmith. I believe if you think and reflect upon blacksmiths that you have seen in most of the rural communities, you will see that they are not really powered by electricity anyhow, because they have never felt the need of it, because their job or their work depended on the coal or the burning of coal. But at the same time, if you look at the top left picture, you'll see that there are two people involved in such activities, where there is one guy who is bellowing air and the other guy who is hammering up. Now, what some of our members have done is they have converted these, furnaces in a way by powering it with a small electric-based fans, for which blacksmith requires energy, which can be provided with a very simple, small 60 watt, solar panel at a very affordable price. What these kind of solutions have done, they have actually brought a blacksmith blower into the main fold stream by looking at benefits of one, reducing the emissions because a blower can better heat and fire up the charcoal. It increases its efficiency. It reduces the drudgery of having one person or somebody from the family to actually just bellowing on the air blower. At the same time, it increases the income because a lot of times renewable energy brings a lot of attention to enterprises in local communities, and it also becomes a pride of the community. There are many such examples. Another example could be about the agricultural processing solutions, which have now been able to scale down to a small farmer level, applications, so that small farmers can take the benefit of actually processing something as simple as rice polishing in their own capacities and sell their produce at a better or higher price. So decentralized renewable energy plays a very important role, and it's important for us to look at decentralized renewable energy from not just the segment of how energy is getting created, but how sustainable value it is creating throughout the life cycle, of that particular productive use or of that particular application. Um, and maybe with this, let me thank you once again all for listening to me intently. I hope that many of you will reach out to Clean. We'll be very happy to share more such examples, involve you more in taking this agenda forward. And yes, I'm looking forward to your support as well. Great. Thank you once again for inviting me to speak, and I hope I've added some value to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Advait, for highlighting how companies can achieve their sustainability development goals via this concept. Startups definitely provide a competitive advantage to the Indian ecosystem, and our next keynote talk shows you why. Niveda is an accomplished entrepreneur who is a big supporter of segregation and has invented the world's first automated segregation unit of fresh mixed waste, as well as found a recycling solution for the non-recyclable plastics. Her invention has been recognized globally by the World Bank, the Red Cross, the UNDP, and the Israel Embassy, and she has achieved several coveted awards both nationally and internationally. I'd like to invite Niveda RM, the CEO and founder of TrashCon, to share with us her journey. Niveda, over to you.
Hello everyone, this is Niveda. I'm the CEO and founder of TrashCon. And at TrashCon, we are solving one of the largest problems that you and I are facing on an everyday basis. I'm sure many of you have seen the streets outside your houses looking like this, be it in any part of, any city in India or be it any other developing country as well. Now, this is the situation everywhere, despite rules, regulations, billions of dollars spent in creating awareness, still the waste gets dumped here. And then eventually this is burnt overnight, causing respiratory diseases in newborn, causing all kinds of diseases, including COVID. And of course, land, water, air pollution leading to global warming. The problems are huge, but there is no solution. The one solution to this huge problem is segregation. Why? Because when you segregate the waste, when you remove the wet waste and the dry waste, when you remove the degradable and the non-degradable, you can recycle the degradable, you can recycle the non-degradable, so it will not have to end up as waste. But imagine a big plastic bag with food, diaper, sanitary napkin, dead rat, glass, metal, everything in the world. Can you do something with this? No. And that is the reason why it is ending up on the streets. So we went out to understand what all solutions are there for this particular problem. So the one solution is, say, manual segregation. Now, you and I don't want to touch our own waste, and we don't want somebody else touching this waste. And of course, this is not scalable because India is generating few lakhs of tons of waste per day, right? And you cannot employ so many people on ground touching waste. The second solution, these are the various other so-called sorting solutions out there. But imagine a black plastic cover, like I told you, with food and sambar dripping, the level of moisture content, the level of dynamism in the waste, all of these solutions go for a toss. So the simplest solution that we have generally is a sieving machine, the channi that you use in your house, and they've made it into a rotary sieve. And this is what you see prevalently in waste management practices. But again, all of this gets clogged because you have all kinds of vegetables and fruits and food and plastic and all the garbage in the world, and it gets clogged. Same thing with vibro screens. Optical sorters use refractive indices. It's very expensive because they're generally used to separate, say, a blue color cover from a red color cover, but it is not used for the kind of waste that I'm talking to you about. A waste to energy plant is where you burn waste to generate electricity. But again, this has not been successful in many developing countries because our waste has a very high moisture content. Now, all these solutions, have been tested and failed. And we realized that, there needs to be a solution that actually works and can take any kind of waste and at scale and solve the problem completely. That is, separate out the waste and recycle it. So that is when we spent days and nights in the dump sites for nearly 3 years to solve the problem. That is me, by the way, in the photo. And what we realized is the waste is very dynamic. It ranges from Tamil Nadu to Calcutta to Gujarat. And it ranges from season to season. It ranges from every day. Look at your own dustbin, right? The waste changes on a day-to-day basis. So how do you create a solution that can take all kinds of waste and give out proper variables? For those of you out there, you know what I'm talking about. Basically, we are trying to create a black box that takes unknown variables and gives out known variables. It was considered scientifically impossible. We were told it is impossible, but that's exactly what we set out to do. To solve the most impossible problem out there, which was waste menace. Ladies and gentlemen, 3 years down the lane, after really looking and shooting in the dark, we came up with the world's first completely automated sorting unit with multiple patents. It sorts the waste beautifully into degradables and non-degradables with minimal manual intervention. And this we do from 2 tons a day for a small village to 200 tons a day for an entire city, for an entire big city. And from this, what I was saying is that we made the impossible happen. What you see on the left is the kind of waste that I told you is on the streets that you and I see every day. What you see on the right is the wet waste and the dry waste, the degradables and the non-degradables that come out of it. The degradables then go for composting and go back to the farmers or get converted to biogas and become a fuel. While the non-degradables, we again had a problem. Because you see these non-degradables, these are primarily plastics. But these are plastics that nobody wants. Not even a recycler, nobody wants. Because these are made of, you can imagine your normal chips cover or your biscuit wrapper. It has a layer of aluminium in it. So these are considered non-recyclable. That means it cannot be recycled. So the only solution to this is dumping it or burning it or sending it to a cement plant where it is used instead of coal. Again, that is not a lucrative option. That is not cost effective. And upon that, it is not circular economy in any case. And what we also realize that 75% of the plastics you and I generate are these kinds of plastics, because you don't throw a shampoo bottle out every day, but you definitely throw a masala packet or a chips packet out every day. This is what we set out to solve, because if we don't solve this, we were not completing the loop. So we pushed ourselves even more and we created yet another solution, a recycling solution, which can take all those, non-recyclable plastics that nobody wants and recycle it into recycled boards. These are real photos, by the way, with those plastics into recycled boards that are similar to plywood. The plywood that you use to make your benches, desks, tables, chairs, your woodwork in your house, all of that can be made from this. And not just that, unlike plywood, it is waterproof, termite proof, even sound resistant to a great extent. And of course, the most beautiful part, which we love the most, it can be recycled again and again and again, which means if you buy a bench or a desk and say after 10 years it breaks, we can take it back and recycle it. That is the beauty of it. This is, our vision is that soon people will stop saying touch wood and start saying touch wow. That's our entire vision with our wow boards. We have made n number of products. All of these are real, by the way. And so many of these are being used in our facilities, in our offices, and we sell it online as well as offline. We have made benches, desks, tables, chairs, work from home benches, planters, cupboards. All of this is possible from the very waste that you and I, look every day and get disgusted with. This is the transformation that we could bring. In fact, we also use it in building in multiple locations. It's used as a waterproof material. We also make pallets for industrial applications, which is a huge, huge, huge business again in itself. And in fact, the most beautiful part about all of this is that we took 24 villages and made them zero waste overnight. So what you see on the left is the dump site, how the village was. What you see on the right is how the village was converted using our technologies. And from the plastics we recovered from these villages, we made benches and desks, tables and chairs to nearly 3,000 government school kids. I would like to pause here and tell you that these government school kids did not have a place to sit. And they used to sit on cold floors, and during winters, they had very high dropout rates. We could provide these benches and desks at an affordable cost, of course. But the most beautiful part was that we were called for an inauguration to this particular facility and this particular school. And a small young girl, maybe 8 years old, was made to get up and say, do you know what this table is made of? And we had not spoken a word. We had gone there just then. And the girl says, the plastics that went out of my house has come back as this bench or desk. This alone is the true solution. The moment there is this sort of awareness, this sort of realization rather, that every bit of waste can be converted to value, is the day when we start solving the problem in reality. And this gave us a lot of hope, and this was such a huge satisfying moment for us. We have some of the largest corporates working with us, including the likes of Unilever, Mondelez, Shell, Pidilite, ONGC, Baker Hughes. We have worked with the UK government and several municipalities and cities across 20 cities in India. We are also exporting to Philippines, to Thailand, to Singapore, and several other countries because the problem is universal. We have, in fact, during COVID, when waste pickers were dying in tens, when we were calling them waste warriors, but they still had to touch our waste pickers were risk-free, as you can see, based on the feedback from our customers. We won during this entire period of trying to solve the problem. We got a lot of support and recognition, which validated our efforts. We were awarded globally by some of the largest organizations, like UNDP, Israel Embassy, Solar Impulse, many such, CII, we were the Startup of the Year award, and many such, we were Impact Maker award. We won across 40 countries. We won globally multiple times and represented India. We were awarded by the Prime Minister of India on national television, Trade Minister and Prime Minister of Norway, in Norway across 40 countries, by the United Nations Deputy Secretary General, by the Principal Scientist of India. Many such awards, which only strengthened our conviction to basically solve the problem. We were written by who's who in the industry, including Prime Minister Kiran Majumdar-Shaw ma'am, Priyank Kharge, to name a few. We were covered in 150 plus media publications globally in India, US, and Germany. But all of this could not be possible without an excellent team. We have a team that is as passionate, as crazy as how I am talking about our vision. We have a 55-member team right now. We have some of the who's who in the industry working with us. All of us are engineers or management professionals from some of the esteemed universities and institutions working in the dump sites to solve the problem. This is our team. These are the warriors who are solving the problem every day. We have impacted few millions of lives now. We are working with some of the world organizations to solve the problem globally. Our idea is that by 2025, we solve 1/4 of India's problem. We are already solving or processing 500 tons of waste per day, which is equal to maybe a complete country in the West, right? But all of this, why are we doing? And the very reason I'm talking to each one of you is that we have a vision. We have a vision that 20 years down the lane, when I am telling a story to my daughter saying, Beta, once upon a time there was trash. And my daughter says, Mama, what is trash? And this is the single vision that we have had from day one till now. And I hope 20 years from now as well. And this is what I would like to share with each one of you and tell that if I can do it at a young age without any background and create a solution which can solve one of the largest menaces in the world, why can't you? This is all I would leave you with. And thank you so much for listening to me and lots of love. Thank you so much. Off to you, Anavi.
Thank you, Niveda. It was very motivating to hear you speak and hear about your journey, and what an invention. Coming up next, we have a keynote, ESG 2.0, Driving Exponential Impact from India GCOEs. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Our last keynote talk for the day is by one of our own. Namita has close to a decade of experience working with CXOs of Fortune 1000 companies. Her main areas of work include assessing center maturity of GCOEs, identifying key levers of transformation, and conducting workshops around leadership and talent development. I'd like to invite Namita Adavi, Engagement Manager at Zinnov, to deliver her keynote. Namita, over to you.
Thank you, Anavi, for that wonderful introduction, and a good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of the attendees logging in from various locations for this conclave. My name is Namita, and I represent Zinnov, and I'm here to deliver the keynote on ESG, Driving Exponential Value from India GCOEs. The work and the deck that you are about to see today is the culmination of months of effort for us as a team, and a quick shout out to my team member Ritvik in being one of the co-authors of this report. With that, let's get started. So ESG, as we understand it, looks at three predominant pillars: environmental, social, and governance. And that is what has formed the basis for this study as well. So we have conducted research over nearly 2 to 3 months, and we continue to do so, and we continue to delve deeper into this subject. But what we have really included as a part of this study is the research that has been done in the last 2 months, and it covers 11 main verticals. So we have looked at software, internet, telecom, retail, BFS, energy, semiconductors, etc., to be covered as part of this particular assessment. What we have also done along the way is we've developed our own proprietary methodology in order to prioritize what it is that India GCOEs, one, have already contributed to, and two, can continue to contribute and create an impact for global, depending on what has approached or arrived very high on the global priority index. And that really forms the basis of the keynote that I'm going to deliver today. So when I say the proprietary priority index, it is something that I will cover in greater depth as we move along in the deck. But before I jump to that, what I did want to cover with you was what buckets or what topics we include under each of the three pillars that I mentioned as part of ESG. So under environmental, we have really your energy management and your GHG emissions, right? And so this includes scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions. We've also called out water stewardship as a separate bucket or a separate part of the assessment. And then we have waste management and circular economy. Under social, we're looking at, firstly, the internal employee and workforce health and safety, and what are the initiatives that a lot of GCOEs are running with respect to that. But we're also looking at inclusion and diversity, and this looks at gender as well as goes beyond gender to look at the LGBTQ and PWT plus. Then we're looking at community development and skilling. So this is really essentially what GCOEs are doing from the perspective of developing external workforces for the social impact. And then finally, community volunteering and giving, which essentially in a nutshell can be called CSR. With respect to governance, we are looking at data security and privacy. We're looking at ethical management and compliance and risk management along with supply chain. Now, a lot of the work that organizations do specifically with brand and reputation risk is what comes under the social aspect of risk management and has been bucketed accordingly. So that's just a quick call out that I had with respect to the buckets that we cover under sustainability. Which brings me to the proprietary framework that Zinnov has really developed, right? One of the things we've done is we've mapped what has a high or low organizational impact with respect to each of the initiatives that organizations have launched, as well as what ranks high on the priority list of a lot of global stakeholders. And this includes internal to the organization as well as external to it. All of this is done with a global lens. The additional layer of analysis that we have really tried to enable is where has India's contribution with respect to the scale and outcomes from initiatives been high, And where do we believe India still has a lot of untapped potential left to go? So what are these key opportunity areas or white spaces that India can really contribute to going forward? And that's what I'm going to be covering today. Everything you see in the output box on the right-hand side of the slide is really what will be covered, or the crux of my presentation today. Let's get started. So I'm going to start with the environmental pillar, right? And we have broken this down into smaller sub-buckets just for ease of reading and more readability for the audience. But a lot of what we found in the environmental pillar has been very unsurprising. Understandably, reducing GHG emissions, the way that organizations utilize resources and energy efficiency, looking at alternatives in the form of renewable energy and being able to offset their carbon footprint has, of course, been a massive focus area for organizations. What comes a little bit lower on the priority list, for example, are conserving freshwater ecosystems, or even surprisingly, wastewater management, right? A lot of companies are getting or becoming very innovative with the way that they are able to reduce or offset their carbon footprints within the organization. And more than 90% of the companies that participated or were surveyed as part of this assessment are prioritizing carbon neutrality as a key goal for the organization globally. Now, with that, I wanted to also touch upon specifically within the environmental pillar, what are India GCOEs contributing to? And this is really where the picture becomes very clear. So you're seeing that, for the darkest blue circles are the ones where India has almost no role to play, or, the outcomes have not been showcased as yet. And this is a bit of a concern because wherever India has had a massive role to play, for example, energy usage efficiency, renewable energy purchase, the use of wastewater management systems, are areas that are areas which are of less importance or less priority to the global organization. Having said that, a lot of progress has been made in certain buckets. For example, renewable energy has picked up because of the cost of entry being reduced drastically in the recent years. You're increasingly seeing that because of economies of scale kicking in, the entry cost of PV cells, for example, or rainwater harvesting systems or wind energy, etc., have drastically come down. And this has increased the net of organizations that can really participate and contribute to renewable energy purchase. So what are companies doing with respect to the areas that are fairly well adopted or high adoption in India, right? So we're seeing that, for example, with respect to renewable energy, companies are exploring alternative sources like solar plants at the top of their roofs for a lot of the commercial spaces. With respect to energy usage, a lot of lighting and HVAC optimization is being done by organizations. With respect to reducing, waste, I think a lot of consumer electronics majors are looking at recycling a lot of the old hardware and repurposing the same, right? While there's a lot of work being done with respect to raising awareness and through workshops, digital sessions, mechanisms such as that, which aim to talk about what are the benefits of reduce, reuse, and recycle. And then wastewater management, which is not really a new concept to most of the organizations here that have massive commercial offices in India. Grey water systems, infiltration shafts, sewage treatment plants, etc., are just some of the examples by which wastewater management is being done within India GCOEs currently. Now, with that, within environment, there are, of course, multiple opportunity areas that emerge that are high on global radars, but India is not contributing to in a significant way yet. We are seeing sporadic or anecdotal examples of companies that have done a lot of work, and that is what has been listed as possible examples for the industry and for the audience here. But having said that, specifically, with respect to circular product design, with respect to adopting more sustainable packaging, especially where you have a physical footprint or a physical product that reaches the consumers, this is going to be a very critical area to focus on. Needless to say, reduced GHG emissions is going to be the need of the future, and this can take multiple forms. We're seeing companies get as creative as possible with respect to something as basic as LEED and Gold certifications for their commercial and either ongoing or upcoming projects, to even using, EVs and low carbon fuels, hydrogen fuel cells, etc., as backup power to replace, for example, diesel generators, right? And to reduce the footprint of their commercial spaces, data centers, etc. So a lot of organizations exploring those plans. And then finally, there is purchasing or generating carbon offsets. And for this aspect specifically, we're seeing that a lot of GCOs are starting to partner with local organizations, local NGOs in order to make this happen. So that was, these are some of the opportunity areas that we believe exist with respect to the environment. Our next pillar was, like I mentioned, the social pillar. And I think social is really where, again, none of the results with respect to the global mapping and global priorities are really a surprise. So we're seeing that, high on the radar, of course, and understandably, is gender-related diversity and inclusion at the workplace. LGBTQ, for example, is not very far behind, right? But there are also, I think, certain areas that have emerged as important as a result of the pandemic recently. So, for example, local community development, we saw this entire wave of help that came off for the migrant worker communities in India, for example, right? And I think similarly, we're seeing a lot of global responses to disaster or business continuity planning, a lot of volunteering and donations that came up as a result of, COVID. Supporting SMBs came up as also a very high priority because they were specifically or particularly hard hit during the pandemic. So I think a lot of organizations recognize the importance of supporting the external community. And a lot of this got expedited during COVID, right? Understandably, I think this is where India GCOs have also made the most progress. And this has been really, really heartening to see. So I think with respect to what the India GCOs have done from the social aspect, of course, gender inclusion and diversity at the workplace continues to be the prime focus area of a lot of the measures that companies are driving for ESG. I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate that gender diversity and LGBTQ and PWD inclusion has become an ESG and a CSR initiative when it really should be more sort of mainstream than that. But I think a lot of GCOs have also recognized, and what has come to the forefront has been the employee well-being and workplace health and safety as a result of the pandemic. So I think because of the major concern in the recent past around employees increasingly feeling isolated, the remote work from home, and the fact that this isn't really going to lift in the next couple of months, I think employee well-being has come up front and center as a focus area for a lot of India GCOs. And we're seeing a lot of spends getting reallocated or moved towards supporting employees as well as communities that are external to the organization. And of all of the three pillars, it needs to be said that I think social has seen the most progress in terms of the maturity of adoption of India teams. So what are some of the examples? I think gender diversity and inclusion is, we've seen it all, where we've seen returnship programs. We're looking at a lot of organizations focusing on leadership development to ensure that there is no loss of women in the workforce as you go up in the experience pyramid. With respect to employee well-being, I think a lot of measures that organizations would have implemented via in-person formats, whether it was coaching and counseling sessions or medical consultations, have now been moved online. In addition to what GCOs are doing for the internal workforces, a lot of GCOs are also looking at how do they empower and upskill the larger external local community. And we're looking at, greater focus on, for example, STEM education, making resources accessible to students across, socioeconomic levels in order to make sure that there is also community impact. And then finally, of course, something that we're seeing in hordes during the pandemic, because companies really did want to step up and help, was the increase in donations as well as volunteer hours, right? And I think this came in the form of multiple formats over the last 2 to 3 years, which could have meant monetary donations, but it also meant a lot of medical infrastructure being sort of imported and donated to the healthcare community in India. Companies really stepping up when it came to sort of donating for the cause of their employees, etc. And we anticipate that, the pandemic, if nothing else, one of the payoffs has been that companies have recognized the need to expedite and have a lot of this volunteering and donation infrastructure in place already, and look at it as a key priority for the organization to flourish instead of it being something that stays on the back burner. Now, there are opportunity areas that emerge as a result of social as well. I think one of the key things that India is waking up to but has not done too well, or is not very mature in adoption, is being able to support small and medium businesses, right? It needs to become a priority. And one of the things that a lot of organizations can do is maybe look at supplier sustainability as a part of the overall procurement, where you include SMBs as part of the procurement life cycle. The other thing that comes up outside of gender-based inclusion is typical inclusion with respect to LGBTQ and PWD inclusion at the workplace. And then finally, we have community upskilling specifically for STEM. Now, this is going to continue to be a concern within especially underprivileged and female populations in India. And it is going to be extremely critical that corporates play a role either in influencing a lot of the policy decision-making for this, or being able to create entire initiatives at education themselves and implementing it themselves. So this is really where I think the value lies and where the opportunity lies with respect to social as a pillar within ESG. And finally, we have the governance pillar. Now, governance is by far, I think, definitely one of the most sort of untapped pillars, and one of the more nascent pillars that the India GCOEs are looking at. And this could be due to a variety of reasons. This could be the fact that, it is very common for decision-making on governance to be located at headquarters, and therefore the key leadership that takes these decisions sitting out of headquarters. But from a global perspective, one of the things that has emerged, of course, is data privacy and security. And of course, this has been expedited with respect to your workforces starting to work from home overnight, and security and cybersecurity specifically becoming a very, very important area. The other thing that we feel like is definitely an opportunity area, because it figures so highly on the global radar, is supplier sustainability, right? So this is not just holding the internal organization accountable to higher standards in sustainability, but also holding your external vendor partners accountable to a higher standard. Other focus areas with respect to governance come up with respect to, of course, due diligence and compliance, which is just staying within the boundaries of the legalities and regulations that companies have by geography. I think one of the things that COVID has also highlighted to a large extent is being able to influence and engage in public policy. As a result of increased focus on GHG emissions globally, even climate change risk management has become a key sort of source of focus for a lot of global organizations. And we anticipate that this is only going to continue to increase. Now, a lot of companies globally are committing to a lot of these measures. So when you look at the example of supply chain, for example, and supplier sustainability, we know that globally companies are looking to support marginal communities, for example, or women-led suppliers, as well as raising awareness consistently via programs, workshops, talks, etc., on why this is important for the organizations. A lot of goal setting that companies do also seems to be centered around these specific aspects of supplier sustainability. But if you look at the India contribution, which is the slide in front of you, we're seeing that India's contribution has been heartening in some aspects. For example, with respect to data privacy and cybersecurity, or transparency and disclosures, India has had quite a bit of role to play. But where India really seems to be lacking is the supplier aspect of it, which is one, your supplier risk management, and two, supplier sustainability performance, right? Even supplier training and diversity, where we're looking at raising awareness amongst your vendor partner base, that also sort of seems to be on the down low and can really become an opportunity area for the organization and for India teams to really explore. So having said that, one thing that I did sort of want to touch upon was what are the India GCOs doing with respect to the areas where they have made significant progress, right? So let me take the example of due diligence and compliance, which is essentially making sure you're operating within the boundaries of the regulations and laws in a specific geography or location. And a lot of due diligence being onboarded, and I think one of the verticals that is fairly mature in this aspect are the BFSI majors. We're also seeing a lot of semiconductor and industrial majors making major strides in this particular aspect. Of course, compliance with your standard laws, GDPR standards, etc., is going to become critical. And where a lot of organizations are able to do it as a shared services construct for the larger global organization. So one of the things that India teams are exploring is, can a lot of this work be driven from India within as an offshore location, almost as a center of excellence within governance ESG for the global organization. And this is an opportunity that we believe definitely does exist for a lot of India GCOEs to explore. Against the background of what should India GCOs really look at, I think one thing that definitely comes to the forefront is, of course, the increasing focus on climate change and risk management. Disruptors are not always going to take the form of a pandemic. There could be natural disasters, epidemiological issues, even external security events, labor disruptions, etc. And for this particular aspect, I think a lot of the governance and due diligence will have to be focused on by GCOEs. The other aspect, and in a big way, that organizations need to focus upon is supplier performance in sustainability. Just holding your vendor partners accountable to greater standards when it comes to ESG. A lot of the push for the ecosystem as a whole will start with this. Will start with ensuring that you're not just holding your internal org accountable to ESG goals, but also your external vendors, right? And that sort of sets in motion a flywheel effect. Engaging and being able to influence public policy is definitely going to be critical. I think organizations need to lead by example. I think one of the things that the pandemic has sort of confirmed, if we didn't already believe it, is that policy making and decision making at the government or industry association level is still extremely weak and very reactive. And it will fall on the shoulders of the largest employers in the ecosystem and in the country in order to be able to influence this. So that is the plea in terms of making sure that you all realize that there is a lot of influence that organizations such as you all have in being the example and leading by change for this particular aspect. So, which leaves me to where to from here, and I think it does become important because I think it's important to call out that now India GCOs really need to move past being compliant, to the 2% as part of the Companies Act, to looking at this as a back burner initiative, to making sure that they prioritize ESG, because there is a lot of business impact that is at stake if you don't, right? The other thing is, for every initiative or every measure that you are not closely considering with respect to why you are doing it and what are the outcomes that you can expect from this, and really introspect on why, what can I really expect in terms of creating a global impact from India, a lot of GCOs need to realign their ESG initiatives. So the first step is really to understand of the initiatives and of your ESG charter currently, what have been the outcomes so far, and are they aligned or not aligned to the social, environmental, and governance needs, as well as to the priorities that global organizations have set for themselves, what your parent organizations have set for themselves. It's going to be important to align outcomes with respect to global goals and redesign your charter if that is what it comes to. So this is going to be absolutely critical as an effort in as little as the next 12 to 18 months. Once you've identified that maybe the initiatives that you're looking at are not aligning with the global ESG goals that organizations have set for themselves, by 2025, by 2030, you need to design a blueprint that will cater to these goals. And that includes deciding what your implementation plan is going to be. Who is going to be your key ESG champion at India? Who's going to be your key ESG champion at global? Where will your budgetary sign-offs come from? How will these initiatives be governed? what are the right KPIs and goals in order to ensure that your efficacy and your success factors are being met? And is there a possibility that you can look at India as becoming a hub for the global ESG initiatives? And can we look at ESG as a COE, very similar to how we look at technology and competency-led COEs in India? So I will leave you with that. This is what I had with respect to our sustainability POV from Zinnov. I do want to call out that this was just the tip of the iceberg for us. We are going to be rolling out a massive sustainability deliverable, in the upcoming months, probably in Q4 of this year, just to give you a sense of where the entire ecosystem is at and where to from here. So of the opportunity areas that we've identified, there will also be an implementation blueprint that will be included as part of the final report. With that, I wanted to sign off. Thank you so much once again to the Intel team for having me here. And thank you so much to all of you for taking the time out to listen. We hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Namita, for calling out opportunity areas for India GCOEs in ESG, and also for highlighting a couple of best practices that these organizations have been doing in this space. A quick reminder to all of our attendees here, we encourage you to head to the Sustainability Pledge wall and make your pledge. With this, we come to the much awaited panel discussion, Circular Economy and Beyond, the India Narrative. We have a varied set of speakers spanning across industry verticals for this session. First up, we have Padmanabhan Kannan, Senior GM and Head Corporate Real Estate and Facilities at Robert Bosch Engineering and Business Solutions. Alongside his role, he is also an active board member for the IFMA Bangalore chapter and member of the steering committee in CII for CRE and FM initiatives. Our next panelist is Mohammad Anzi, Chief Operating Officer at SAP Labs India. In his current role, Anzi oversees business operations across key locations for SAP Labs India, Bangalore, Gurgaon, Mumbai, Pune, and Hyderabad. Our third panelist is Mahesh Batija, Head of Central Functions and Executive Sponsor for CSR at Society General Global Solutions Center, India and Romania. Alongside being an executive sponsor for the India and Romania regions, Mahesh has 3 decades of experience spanning transformations and ops of central functions, digital transformation, and strategy. The session chair for this panel is Manas Das, Senior Director, Business Operations at Intel India. In his current role, he is responsible for the creation and delivery of a composite and cohesive business enabling strategy for spanning all business enabling groups across Intel India. Manas, over to you.
Thank you, Anavi. It's been a great day till now. Lots of good stuff that has happened. Let me now kick off this wonderful panel discussion with our great guests that we have out here. Paddy from Bosch, Andy from SAP, and Mahesh from Society General. Folks, I just wanted to dive right into the meat of our discussion today, which is sustainability and what it means for our organizations. I know it's a loaded term and all of us can go for hours on it, but I would want to get your snippets. But before that, I just wanted to dive into our Intel example, right? So in 2020, we took a 2030 goal of what's called RISE, and RISE stands for responsible, inclusive, sustainable, and enabling, right? So responsible is around the entire responsibility space that we have from our perspective as a corporation. The whole, we talk about how technology will improve health and safety. That's one part. By inclusive, we talk about how do we make technology fully inclusive and expand our digital readiness. And then sustainability, obviously very clear, achieving carbon neutral computing to address climate change. And enabling is a beautiful piece that we said that we will involve our employees and technology in some ways to achieve our goals. So those were the goals that were set. But most importantly, involving our employees and the employee passion became a pretty important piece of the whole puzzle. And to the point that specific goals or bonus goals were taken around that. So now we're talking about how we're relating compensation to our, in some ways to our sustainability. So really making it matter. So that for that reason, we have long encouraged our employees' passion for the environment, right? So that's the linkage that we have. from the India R&D organization, we said we again took a pretty long, lofty goal kind of a thing, right? We said that sustainability will be the backbone of everything that we do at Intel India, for our employees, for our business, and for our communities and for Intel. So we said, okay, we'll take the big goal, and we'll say how we'll march towards it. So the combination of our 2030, the corporate goals and the lofty mission statement or motto that we have taken, somewhere fuels us into this whole sustainability journey. I just want to stop with the Intel example here and pass it on to maybe you, Anzi, and let's get started with your story, and then we'll move on to all of them.
So at SAP, we have a core purpose of helping the world run better and improve people's life. And thus, sustainability is the core of what we do at SAP. And at SAP, we have two dimensions. The first dimension is that we wanted to help our customers embrace sustainability through the different solutions that we deliver. And the second part is internally for SAP as a location, we wanted to kind of live the sustainable practices, the way we run our operations. So if you look at the first part, there are 4 key attributes that we look at it. First is the climate action, which means that helping the customers to track the carbon footprint and the different emission footprints and measure the impact. On the second part, it's more towards the circular economy, where we kind of help the customers to eliminate waste and bring it back to the supply chain. And third part is primarily on the social responsibility, where we help organizations to kind of establish different governance standards into the product life cycle. And on the fourth side, we help the organization to kind of embed sustainability goals into their profitability and different financial models. This is one major part what we do at SAP. On the second part, how do we live the sustainability in our operations, right? I mean, it's very proud to say that the India location, the different campuses that we have, 94% of our facilities run on green energy, which means that we have large solar installation which feeds back the energy back to our grid. And at the same time, 70% of our transport fleet is running on EV vehicles. And these are the two different dimensions where SAP kind of lives the sustainability goals. At the same time, we also help our customers to live.
That's great. Paddy?
Yeah, I know. I think Bosch also being in multi-dimensional sort of businesses, I think sustainability is a very core of what we as an organization believe. So I think there are, at different companies, there are different actions, but I think as a group, Bosch has set what is called as New Dimension Sustainability 2025, target vision, which kind of very clearly specifies 6 fundamental aspects of what we believe as sustainability matters, like climate, energy, water, urbanization, globalization, and health being the key topics. So, there are medium-term, long-term targets, Manas, like for example, 2020 was a target for us to go, carbon neutral on scope 1, scope 2 emissions, which we successfully completed across 37 sites in India and across almost around 350 sites around the world. And I think also, the topic of the discussion today is around circular economy. We being in multi, different businesses, including, consumer products, we believe in that, and I think there are specific targets for those businesses. So in a way, it is a very well thought through and very, very actionable sort of a vision statement that we have. I'm sure we can talk more as we go forward with this discussion.
Wonderful. And Mahesh?
So thank you, Manas, and completely agree with what Anzi and Paddy have been saying. For SocGen, as we call ourselves, and I will come to one disclaimer later, but for SocGen, really we defined earlier this year our mission statement, our strategy for the whole group. I'm saying about this is 135,000 people around the world working. And where we really said we want to build with our clients a better and sustainable future by leveraging innovative financial solutions. So, we really put sustainability at the heart of our strategy. Our CEO of the group, Frederic Udia, has gone on record multiple times. This is what we publish out to our investors in our quarterlies now, where we clearly say there are only 3 elements to our strategy, and one of these 3 is sustainability. And this is we're talking about group business strategy. We're no longer talking about a CSR strategy or an ESG strategy as such. As a bank, I would say there are 2 very important pillars to how we define sustainability. And then I'll come to what it means for us in India or in India and Romania. But in the bank, the most important role we play, and we have signed recently what we call the Net Zero Banking Alliance. It's a United Nations endeavor. How do you finance? Because as a bank, your main influence is through financing. How you can influence your clients to change, move away from fossil fuel, move away from coal, carbon, etc. So we have made both long-term commitments that our entire investment portfolio, financing portfolio, would be net zero by 2050. We have set much shorter goals that, for example, by 2030, we would not finance any projects which don't have a full exit from coal strategy in EU or OECD countries, as an example. So financing we see as a key element through which we can influence and accompany our clients. We have recently been ranked number 2 in the world in renewable energy financing. So this, and it's not easy for a bank because you're giving up business when you make this decision to say I will only finance this and I will not finance this, because traditionally we were asked to finance coal and thermal power, etc. So one is carbon for our clients. The second is carbon on our own account, where we have made commitments in several countries. For example, in Czech Republic, where we are the 3rd largest bank in the Czech Republic, we have committed to be net zero on our own account by 2026. So trying to go shorter and shorter on our carbon, and carbon being, of course, for all sustainability efforts around the planet part. The second part being European and really being also driven by society also on this, I would say, is for our own employees, right? And we have made 2 commitments on this. One is really around upskilling people. We want to ensure that at least 25-30% of all the jobs we have will be filled through upskilling people rather than going out in the market and getting them. And in Europe, given the demographics we have, this is quite an important objective for us. The second one is really to be inclusive and diverse as a workforce, where we have committed that for all our important boards across the world, we would have at least 30% women by 2023 and 30% non-French international staff. We really want to go international and be inclusive with our workforce. On that, I will just end with one disclaimer, Tapas. Normally, as part of those commitments on being inclusive, we don't speak in forums where there is not enough gender diversity. And we had to, last minute had a dropout. So given the topic and the fact it was a last minute dropout, I can give that disclaimer and be there, but otherwise normally I would not even be able to participate into this. So that's as a group. Of course, in GSE, we are doing a few endeavors internally in India. We are in a multi-tenanted building, so it's not easy to do green energy like Intel has done, like SAP has done. But we have negotiated hard in Chennai with one of the providers. We are 80% green energy now. And in India, in Bangalore part, we even now negotiating with ITPL, for example, multi-tenanted again. We will finance and we will put up our own solar panels and wind power, as we are negotiating to get the permission to do that in the towers which we occupy. So that's it from my side.
Hey, thank you, Mahesh. That was very, very informative, and completely understand your commitment to diversity. That's critical in this whole game. There are no 2 ways about that. So one of the things that comes to my mind is about innovation, right? And everything that we do, we typically, try to do something innovative, either something which is very particular to our respective work functions, or maybe to the overall theme. So I just wanted to go around and really pick your brains on what specific innovations that, or maybe one example from each of you to what kind of innovative practices that you have either espoused or a framework that you have created. So let me start with you, Paddy.
Just one thing that I want to kind of put a disclaimer. I'm about 6 months in Bosch, but I think I must tell you, in 6 months, the amount of commitment that I've seen in the group in terms of sustainability and care for our resources and people is absolutely outstanding. I can probably pick up many examples, and I think from whatever I've seen and felt very special, I would say. Like for example, I said the commitment to go carbon neutral across all our operating sites, which is around 400 plus around the world. All across the world, 400 sites are carbon neutral, achieved for Scope 1, Scope 2 by 2020 itself, which in itself is a huge commitment. And I think I know the amount of planning, the amount of resources, the amount of leadership which kind of made commitments to such a goal is enormous. And I see that very seamlessly working. And I think the other goal is that also to kind of reduce the Scope 3 emissions by almost by 15% by 2025, which all of us are working towards it. I think Bosch being into different businesses, I also see commitments otherwise, like for technological innovations. Like for example, we have a platform called Phantom Edge, which is nothing but edge computing platform with AI and IoT enabled systems, which kind of looks at connected missions, smart buildings, energy monitoring for different businesses. And I think we use that even for our own campuses, which one tells you the energy consumption and the kind of monitoring. Energy, it kind of gives us the energy signatures, which enables us to take more insightful decisions, right? And I think there are other examples, like for example, on the consumer side of things, Bosch has kind of piloted a program called the Blue Movement, which is basically leasing out all the appliances. Like I'm sure all of you know Bosch Siemens appliances, like whether it is washing machines or dishwashers. They kind of started a leasing leasing program, just to ensure the life cycle of the asset is monitored very well, either to extend it or to kind of responsibility recycle it or whatever. Bosch takes complete responsibility. I think this is a pilot that actually ran in Netherlands. I think they're also looking at see how we can get it into other markets. I can go on with more examples. Like for example, we also have a platform called AutoTrace. I think we had a discussion or a topic around supply chain management, right? So this is basically a blockchain for the entire supply chain management system, which focuses around, I'm sure, all the optics of supply chain management, but also to kind of look at how can we do by creating efficiency, reduce resource consumption and things like that. So we can probably talk. I think, of course, we cannot forget about electrification and e-mobility technologies that Bosch is kind of very seriously committed to. All of that, though, has a business purpose. I think the core of it is still looking at sustainability in a very focused way.
Thank you, Paddy. That's exciting. Anzi?
It's kind of shared before. We really would like, as a location, SAP Labs India, would like to become carbon neutral by 2023. And if you remember, which I mentioned some time back, we started the electric vehicle journey way back in 2019, and then we have completely changed all our employee travel and mobility kind of installation into electric vehicles. And that's something that we are very aggressively pursuing to make it happen. So these are the two key aspects I would share here.
Thank you. And Mahesh?
Yeah, so I would suggest, I would propose to talk about a banking product which we have created from an innovation perspective. So the shipping industry is one of the more polluting industries in the world. We were pioneers to what are known as the Poseidon principles, where we have, as a financing arm, have tied up with financiers, shipbuilders, and the freight agencies to create a kind of consortium committing to reduce and even bring the shipping industry to net carbon neutral by 2050. So this was, of course, the cooperative movement almost was one innovation, but more importantly within that, we have started helping shipping companies to raise finances. But one of the most recent innovations which we did this year was we allowed an Asian shipping company which had issued sustainability bonds last year to trade a derivative product, which said the faster they accelerate towards, going towards carbon neutral in line with the Poseidon principles, the lower the interest they pay. So it's a derivative product, and we are That's our specialty derivatives. So, we created the derivative product. So the idea is, how do you use innovation really at the heart of your products to drive change? So that is one, I would say, as a kind of company based in India, Romania, one of the things we've done, and we have not completed our scope 2 fully, but at the group level, we've made commitments and we are benchmarking across the world how we are doing. And sometimes the data availability, data reliability is a problem in this benchmarking. You all have been through this journey, you probably know it. But the pilot for some of the tools, we are working with a French startup from Romania and India. And that's now becoming the pilot for the group, really, that do you have the right reliable data and how you're benchmarking and comparing with peers across the 80, 90 countries you're present in, right? But we started as a small pilot, but now this is what is probably becoming one of the main bases on which they will do more benchmarking around the world.
That's very interesting. So I'll jump into Intel. So, we being in the R&D, primarily R&D, outfit out here, we decided that we will really look into what can we do from the product development perspective. So we took a leap of faith and started something called a sustainability lab. Now, what does that do? We work with some of our partners to start co-engineering products right from the beginning, looking at sustainable practices, sustainable components, and engineer products at the lab right from scratch, right? So there we see lots of wins from the sustainability perspective, and that continues. Hopefully you will hear about some product releases, which I can't talk about at this point in time. But that was a leap of faith, and we said, okay, that's what we will do. In addition, what we also do in the sustainability lab is looking at our overall product life cycle and tear down the entire systems that we have to see what is the maximum reuse that we can do in this regard, right? And where all can these be applied, right? That has become a pretty prevalent part into our entire product development process also, and that is holding us good. And finally, the whole idea of the R&D lab which we've created what's called a sustainability certification in that lab. We just kind of trying to propagate it and make it pretty pervasive, at least in similar companies like ours, where you will get a sustainability certification from the lab if you are able to kind of put your products through the entire deep dive and the tear down that I'm talking about. So all these coming from just our India, scenario where some of the brilliant minds have got together saying that we have the infrastructure, we have the know-how, we do R&D very closely, develop products in collaboration with various parts of the world. Can we do something different? So this is one of the examples that I would take from Intel. All right, this is very exciting, and we're heating up now, or warming up, as they say. So I will move on to our theme of today around circular economy, right? And circular economy means a lot of things to a lot of people, and I just wanted to give you folks or get your perspectives on what are we doing, or what are your respective companies doing from the circular economy perspective. So let's go with. I'm just opening it up. So, Anzi, do you want to go?
Yeah, from SAP point of view, I think there is a large application portfolio that we kind of created for in terms of enabling the sustainable enterprises, and that's where the circular economy comes into picture. So we do have recently announced a new product which is called SAP Responsible Design, and this product actually takes care of reducing the waste during any kind of manufacturing process. It gives you insights in terms of what's the kind of recycle quotient available for specific components that you are using, and help the manufacturer or the business to kind of take a very conscious decision how much you are able to recycle, how much you are able to reuse, and how much you are able to upcycle on some of these. And that's something very unique that we have done recently. And I'm sure that also with respect to some of the existing portfolio solutions that we have, we also help organization to make sure that we do have a product which is SAP Reuse, where you help connect plastic vendors with manufacturers and then kind of help them to reuse and recycle activities. So we are there already, and again, SAP Responsible Design is a product which will further help before even this problem is created, right? During the design stage itself, you will have the insight in terms of what's the kind of impact that we are going to create with the product, different material products.
Thank you, Anzi. What about you, Patty?
Yeah, of course. I think this is a very. I was just thinking about the question, and I think from a Bosch perspective, I would want to answer it at two levels. One, I think from a very strategic level, I told as part of our Vision 2025, sustainability is at the core of your product design, right? So, which means anything that Bosch does, whether it is in terms of software technologies or products or platforms, engineering platforms or whatever, I think sustainability is kept in its core to kind of see how whatever products or technology that we put across is kind of helping create that sort of impact what we are talking. But just to come more closer to what we do on a day-to-day basis, like for example at our facilities, because I also manage the entire facilities and workplace for Bosch here. So the philosophy is including our buildings, our workplaces, the kind of processes that we run. How do we kind of look at longevity of whatever we use? Like for example, the facilities that we create. I think the generation shift happens every 4 or 5 years, right? But I think we have kept it very flexible, and I have kind of extended the use case to whatever period possible, meaningfully. Of course, we have to keep the business in mind, but also just to kind of also bring back some very product-specific examples. Like we have a example like Bosch Exchange program. What does it do? It kind of looking at the product. I think they kind of recondition products which still has useful life, and then kind of restore it to whatever functionality, fit for purpose sort of a philosophy, and then give it back into the market. And this is a program which is running only in some specific markets. So this is purely squarely aimed at extending the product life, because there is still functionality left in the product. How do we kind of reduce creation of such products when you have something that can still extend the life, right? So that's a philosophy on which this whole program was created, I suppose. So things like that, many small examples, and I think Manas, I'm sure you would agree. Here, I think intent and action is more important than vision. Vision is good; it will guide us, but I think the intent action kind of creates that impact on a day-to-day basis. So there are many examples that I see here in Bosch.
That's fabulous, and I'll jump right into an Intel example, right? So we have our external partners, our third-party logistics providers that run our what we call reverse logistics, right? Where you have repairs, returns, and all those things that happen, and that's where a lot of these important decisions are made. They have the eyes and the ears almost, and they see what's coming back into the return centers, right? And how do we make the most out of it, right? They help us identify where we can make the decisions and all that, right? So from what they do is really look at, okay, how can we, ensure that the minimum of, actually the goal is zero to landfill, but at this point in time, we have seen a step function improvement, right? We have seen that the product that comes to us today, about 99% of the returns are either reused or reclaimed, and less than 1% ends in a landfill at this point in time. And from what we can't reuse, around 44% we reclaim. So last year we recognized about $30 million in value from these decisions. And one part is we've been able to also generate revenue from that. So there's kind of inspiration for folks to do that more. And it's increasingly, roughly around 5 to 10% each year. We are kind of expecting it to continue to go up. So we've built it into the process that the more we look at it, that is one of the fag end areas where we can definitely catch it and ensure that we do the best thing out of it. So that's really helped. And of course, bringing that revenue angle, though it's not a revenue motive, but bringing the revenue angle kind of motivates a lot of the people who are in the action, giving them that credit, saying, folks, you have really done it, right? With what would typically have gone into a landfill, not only have you reclaimed it, helped the environment and the society, but also made money out of it. So let's kind of go and propagate that further. That's going year after year. So that's just an example I wanted to kind of give you. Any inputs from you, Mahesh?
So actually, we are Manas more at the scope 1, scope 2 stage, but as an entity in India, a couple of quick examples. Paddy spoke about extending the longevity of his facilities. As a bank and as a service company, our main product is services actually. But what really gets recycled for a slot is our IT hardware mainly. And what we did a few years back, and we continue to do that, is our laptops, which had an average life of X years, has now been increased by about 1.5 years. But we have put in place processes that when those are disposed, you get the clearances from whatever SEZ, etc. But you ensure it is not just given off to anybody who can pick it up from you, but it goes to NGOs, our CSR partners, and we can trace its use. So that's one thing we've done, but it's a more local endeavor than something, because we're not really a product company ourselves that way. The other thing which I like Anzi's beginning of the, when he started, not just on this question, but the very beginning, he spoke about, it's about involving the people, involving the staff. Just this month, we've launched a campaign, which is quite interesting for us, Manas, is because people can't come back to office, cannot connect. We use that as a constraint, but we convert that to a kind of opportunity. We've tied up with NGOs, and in 20 cities, though we are present only in 2 cities, they are going to people's homes and collecting used electronics, used stuff, and recycling it. So it allows them to feel connected, but it also allows them to feel that they're giving back. So these are a couple of small examples which I can state, which we are doing more. Otherwise, what we are doing on Scope 1, Scope 2 as a group is much more on the sourcing side, more upstream at the moment. And we will come to the Scope 3 especially, I think, probably in the next year and a half.
Thank you, Mahesh.
Manas, if you allow me, I was just thinking through, while I think we can quote examples from all our corporates, I was actually thinking the very, crux of circular economy is in the Indian ethos, right? I don't know, maybe in our generation, I don't know, but at least I've seen my dad collecting every discardable, material in my home, and then keeping it for a purpose, which will come later. We do not know what is the purpose, but it will come later. I said, boss, don't accumulate trash. But he always finds those uses. In fact, I've realized multiple times what he kind of stored came to a use, very, very purposeful use later. But I think we have seen it in multiple examples, and I think we just need to learn to adapt such small things into what we call as the grand vision, the grand strategy that all of us can define. But I think things will come from those small things that we learn out of, like I said, awareness among all our people as to how they can contribute. Any vision that any of us spoke here will not be realized fully unless our people cooperate, right? I think people awareness and people engagement is also a core of all that we do in terms of sustainability.
Brilliant segue, Paddy, into our next discussion about people, as you said, right? And, as you rightly say, every bit adds up, right? You may dismiss it off as either hoarding or, hey, come on, will it really make a big difference? It's not about the big difference. It's about all these pieces, the sum total of which is going to be definitely significant. So brilliant point. That gives me a big segue into our people practices, right? And so I'll just tell you the story of our employee resource group, right? We have an employee resource group, which is a sustainability employee resource group. Now, this team was not formed very long back. It was a 16 to 18-month-old group. In the amount of stuff that these people are doing, like we had Earth Day and an Environment Day, and innovatively they said, okay, let's have a competition with kids, a 6-year-old, 9-year-old, 12-year-old, creating these little themes and pictures and things like that. It's amazing that if you catch a child early and you kind of embed, in some ways, instill these values inside them, it automatically becomes a part of their life. And the outputs were so imaginative and so creative. We were like amazed. And now we have all those pictures being printed and put up on various parts of our campus, so that when our employees come back post the COVID scenario, they see examples of what they are. But the sheer involvement, the sheer passion, and the way with which our employees are, attacking this, whether it is, really espousing zero plastic on the campus, really looking at, okay, what else can be done in the way, the greenery and how they're supporting the greenery on campus and beyond and things like that. I'm amazed about that. And so I think there is this whole little spark that's needed. And then you have people going off and doing things of their own. You don't have to monitor them, modulate them, take a goal on that, and really kind of strap them in a way that you have to do this and you have to do that. All these wonderful stuff comes out of that. Any such employee related stories that you folks may have?
I can go with one, Manas. We were looking at, okay, when the pandemic first struck and people said what everybody's gone home, started working from home, etc. Then between wave 1, wave 2, we had the opportunity for people to start coming back, and we said, what do you all want to take away? So of course everybody's talking about the new normal and work from anywhere and everything. A bunch of our very, very young staff came with the idea saying, we managed 3 or 4 months without printing anything. Not even the regulatory documents, not even invoices which our regulators or tax authorities expect us to print in India, right? And they made us issue a manifesto, a signed manifesto, saying we'll reduce our printing by 85%. And to take it further, they went ahead and pushed us to decommission 85% of our printers. So even when you come back, these are not available. So, you listen to, especially, I think more and more of the workforce coming in, they are conscious. You need to let them speak. You need to let them contribute. You talked about the zero plastic. They did that for us 2-3 years back. One fine day we came and all cups had disappeared, all bottles had disappeared. But you have to empower them and, I would say let them, I think you have to trust them, and they have some brilliant both values and ideas which they will go forward.
Awesome.
I think that kind of reminds me of a quote, the right conscience and an ignited consciousness can produce results that we never thought would be possible. Like, for example, the example itself is a situation that we all live in, right? Pre-pandemic, I'm sure all of us had some very, very solidly built BCP programs, never imagined to test it in the scale that we all did, But I think we quickly learned to adapt and then live with it. And I think, today it looks like very seamless, right? And I think even today we are coming together in a very virtual platform. And I think that's becoming the normal scene across. We are still learning, we are still doing our businesses. I'm sure we are the fortunate lot, I guess. But I think we learned it we didn't have documentation to manage such a scale, right? But I think the human factors helped, and then we all did it. Similarly, for all the sustainability, climate challenges that we have, I think we just need to have a very, very strong intent. And I think the intent is important. And how do you kind of factor that? I think many examples, we are speaking about people here. If you really look at it, many things that, like, for example, Mahesh did tell about the printer example. You can, like, for example, simple things like food wastage, or electricity consumption at office, or for example, carpooling, and we kind of are kind of coming out of the program where we are encouraging people to use more of e-mobility. So we do not have a the reserve car parking in our offices, but including the senior most people in the company. But we are making reserve car parks for people who are going to use e-mobility, just to make a statement and make them feel special. And for cyclists, we kind of created the most magnificent parking lot that we have in our campus is for the cyclists. So I think what are we kind of doing is a very, very indirect messaging to say that, we are encouraging, we are with you, and support such causes. I think it kind of creates a message, one leads to another, and that's how all these things develop. So I think people is important, engagement with them is important, creating the right awareness, and then, making sure that we create the right outcome will all come through people is what I also believe.
Back to our discussion, we were talking about people, and let's move to energy. SAP, I know, Andy, you folks have done an amazing job with the EV effort. That you talked a little bit about that, and in our own ways, from the energy consumption and the sources of energy, what we have tried to do at Intel is looking at renewable energy sources, right? In terms of whether it is the fuel cells or whether it is solar, and kind of have reversed the mix from 75% grid to 25% renewable to the opposite at this point in time, where our grid dependence is reducing almost by the day. So that's the kind of story that we embarked into a few years back, and I know a lot of people are asking us for our it's our fuel cell story that a lot of people come to talk to us about. So, are there any such energy initiatives that you folks have, and what else can we talk about from the energy perspective? Maybe NZ, you can tell us more about your EV story. How did that start? And how did you start so early?
Back in 2016, we kind of incentivizing employees to, because we do have a car lease program where employees could do. We kind of extended a green benefit where we discount some of the road taxes that they have to pay, plus kind of reduce interest loans to our employees so they can afford electric vehicles. At the same time, we also looked at keeping some of the vehicles at our premises for the commute between our different office locations. That's where we started. Then slowly we looked at and kind of moving away from the different airport shuttles that we used to run from our campus in Whitefield to the airport. We kind of changed the fleet to I think Mahindra Reva and Mahindra E-Verito, two options. Back then it was available. So that's where we started, and we kind of looked at extending that in 2019 and 20 to electric buses so that our employees could use it. But then we couldn't go ahead with that because of the lockdown and pandemic. One other significant initiative that we have done is also with respect to the power backups, right? We changed the entire battery panels to lithium-ion batteries, which also saves cost. And I mean, in terms of the recycle options are much higher, and also the efficiency is much higher there. So these were the two options that we kind of embarked on way back in 2019.
Thank you.
I can go next on that.
Yeah, sure.
And what Anzi said actually reminded me, we recently did this earlier this year. So there was a time when this office was built, people used PCs and not laptops. So the entire infrastructure was designed keeping that in mind. And as is wont, we lived with the default. We forgot that we had moved on where 100% of our population a few years back had actually moved away to laptops. And when we recently did an audit, the facilities team did the audit, and they realized our UPS capacity, which we have, is enormous. It was designed for PCs, right? You don't want any fluctuations. The fact that today, even if everybody was in office, the fact that a few years back, actually, we could have done it a few years back, we missed it. So the fact that, everybody's on laptop, you don't really need that UPS capacity. And now we were able to ease out a lot of the batteries, as Anzi said, and reduce a lot of energy on that. It's one example which came to mind when he was explaining that how we can miss sometimes an obvious change because the change is happening over a period of a couple of years and you don't realize at some point the change has happened fully and you can make a radical change. And this one saved us quite a bit of energy, I can say.
Fabulous.
Yeah. I think what Mahesh was telling is so very relatable. I was just thinking through my own journey when you were saying that. And I think that's become a hygiene. In any office, I'm sure that's a low-hanging fruit. Everybody can, kind of pick it up. I have to tell you that, of course, not in Bosch, in my previous company, we kind of retired close to something like 400 kV of UPS capacity, just because of the same reasons that Mahesh was saying. I think in Bosch, as I speak, there are more than 2,000 different energy ENCON projects are happening across the world. And I think just in 2020 alone, they added another 1,000 projects, which means all of these projects are basically small, medium, large, whatever it could be. Not necessarily brings in sustainability benefits, but also brings in a lot of operating benefits to the bottom line, right? Whether it is energy, through energy, its cost and efficiency, high availability, and so on and so forth. So I think sometimes as facilities managers, you have to kind of wear different hats. Sometimes you have to wear the experience hat, sometimes you have to wear the cost hat. If you're going to the CFO's room, obviously you'll have to wear the cost hat and then talk to him from, hey boss, look, the ROA on this is just about 12 months, 18 months. And I think the savings drive much larger bottom line benefits otherwise, right? And I think that's how, I think Bosch is also very, very proactive in terms of taking up such retrofits, because we are also into manufacturing, technology, so on and so forth. Very important. And then what I was trying to tell you is it's not only giving you sustainability, climate benefits, but absolute business bottom line benefits.
Brilliant, yeah, absolutely. And as we were just going through this audit a few days back, and I think the auditor said it very well, right? It's not just about the environment and everything; it's also about the business, about the profitability. Everything can be sustainable, right? So that is an eye opener of sorts. And we are now looking at, let's not shy away from profits. Let's not shy. We are a going concern, so let's not shy away from profits. Let's not shy away from business. But how can we do those also sustainably? So that's a great point that you make, Paddy. With that, I think one of the things that I want to really touch upon today is about India and its growing role in our corporations on all aspects, and sustainability is one of them. So I just wanted to pick everyone's brains on how is the sustainability management structure in your respective companies? Is there a sustainability officer? Is it amorphous kind of a mass of people who have just gotten together? How does it work? And of course, there's no right answer. I just wanted to kind of get some perspectives around that. Anybody can go.
No, I will probably go first. And I think in Bosch, I think the entire organization around sustainability itself is a very large organization. And I think we have a central team at a group level, and I think each country would have representative or a regional spot. And under the region, there could be multiple different companies who will also have their own teams working for sustainability projects. So we kind of have a very matrix structure where each of these companies prioritize what is that good for that unit. When I say unit, it could be multiple units within a city also, right? So, like for example, I represent Robert Bosch Engineering, which is a software arm of Bosch. So I have a team under me which is focused around sustainability. I have a leader who represents that. We not report, but rather work in a very collaborative way to the regional office in India, and the regional office again works with the central team in Germany. So that's how it works, and that's why I said almost around 2,000, 3,000 ENCON projects that is running in is kind of distributed between these layers of leaders that we have. And there is a focus. In fact, the Germany team comes into some regions for knowledge sharing, audits, and so on and so forth. And they also kind of give grants beyond my local unit budget. There are grants that comes from the sustainability organization for taking up some sustainability or energy efficient projects. That's how the Bosch structure is evolved.
Yeah, to continue, Manasa, we do have a sustainability vertical where we do have a global head of sustainability who takes care of the conversation across lines of businesses. But just like innovation, right? I mean, it's very pervasive. It's across all the lines of businesses. It's across all the product development teams, because this is something that we have to infuse into every product that we make and every conversation that we kind of do internally. I mean, just to give you an example, right? When you're completely switched on to the virtual setup, right? It also happens that we do a lot of gifting across employees, employee to employee gifting and organization to employee gifting, and that's where we kind of came up with an approach where we wanted to make sure that it's sustainable procurement comes to the picture, that things which can be recycled, upcycled, can be made available for the employees. And it has become a culture across the employees, right? Now, what happens is that every time if a group of employees would like to look at it, it has come a culture that they look at whether this is recyclable. Are we creating any kind of impact or carbon footprint to the global system? And that's where they kind of take a very conscious decision. Also, the same way, we are a large research and development center. We build products for our customers, software product for customers, and each of these products we have to infuse sustainability practices into that. So, in short, the employees have become very conscious about the best practices that they should do, and it has become very pervasive in our organization. And while there is a vertical which is focused at running efficiently internally at SAP, but from an employee and organizational perspective, it's across, and everyone takes their lead in driving sustainability.
Mahesh?
So from our side, we have below the general secretary at the group level, a department which drives sustainability, especially for our own account. And when I say own account, it's our own footprint. And they clearly have three leads, one on facilities, because that's a huge part of our sustainability, one on sourcing, because if you don't cut it there, you'll never recover from there. And the third one, because for a bank, that's a fairly large source of energy consumption, is IT. So they have three leads, therefore, on that topic. From our side, we are part of that program they run on these three main pillars on our own account. But what we have also done is, as Paddy explained, we have to get everybody, and as we explained, we have to get everybody embodied and empaneled onto this journey. We have tied our sustainability efforts along with what we call citizenship, whether it's volunteering of people and the sponsorships, donations, etc. We've tied it together along with diversity. So it's like one holistic setup we have, which runs in India and Romania, and we govern it through that mechanism as well. So it's two ways. One is to get the people involved locally in India, Romania, but at the group level, it's really these three. On the business side, because finally it's also, as I started at the beginning, it's about how the bank can help clients. Each business has been asked to publish, and most of them have published a 2025 strategy, not on sustainability, a business strategy. But clearly, as I said, one of the three pillars they've had to publish on is what are they doing on ESG. So that's
Brilliant.
how we're organized.
Yeah. And very similar story in Intel, right? It's not like we have many people who have a focused kind of, repertoire, which is sustainability. Everyone has a role to play. So we have created vectors, like as I spoke about R&D, I spoke about water, we spoke about, employee resource groups, we spoke about CSR. Everywhere sustainability is inbuilt. And though there are certain functions globally which are chartered with, shepherding us through the sustainability process, I don't think there are too many people who will say 100% of my job is sustainability, because the idea is that sustainability should be a part of the process that we kind of undertake in anything that we do. So very similar, but it's a quasi team that we have on site. I manage this effort in some ways, but I always say I shepherd them more than lead, because each one of them is passionate, whether it is energy, whether it is water, whether it is people, whether it is any of them, the supply chain and all. We have those representatives coming in, a quasi group which is formed, showcasing what they have, discussing with the ecosystem, bringing in the ideas and things like that. And once every quarter, we do a report out to our corporate framework. So it works fine, actually. And would a very formal structure make any difference? I would think it to the contrary, channelizing the energy that people have, looking at people who are passionate about it and ensuring that we engage them in the process has turned out to be much better than creating this, watertight organization of sorts, which has its own pitfalls. So I know there's no right solution, but this has been a great sharing of the structure, right? So we're coming to the fag end of our discussion today, but I wanted to kind of end with a couple of questions from the audience, and Anavi has passed me some questions out here. So I just wanted to talk about, supply chain, right? Specifically supply chain practices and the role that sustainability plays in that. So what are some of the key pointers from your supply chain perspective? Eddie, Anzi, any one of you?
Yeah, I think I will attempt it first. I think, that's a very interesting question, and I think that's where I also feel a lot of work is left to do. Like, for example, while we kind of do responsible sourcing and things like that, there is so much more we can do working with the partner organizations, right? I think I'm just taking very, local facilities related examples. Like, for example, when we do FM, when we do construction, when we do so many other local activities, while we may have the emphasis on how sustainability is built into our programs, we kind of not fully go into our partner organization. What do they do? What kind of policies do they have? Do they really influence their back-end supply chain and on aspects what is important to us? We are probably can do better, I would say. And I think that's where I think this awareness and intent comes in. I think if I have to just coin this, I think we need to move away from the convenience of managing such programs to the conventional truth, right? And I think what is really matters that we need to focus there. I think the time for tokenism is gone, and we need to clearly have the intent and follow that with impactful actions, and that's when it will clearly produce the kind of results that we want. So there, I would say that while we have many programs running, our focus is to kind of do more in that area. That's one of the focus areas for us.
I'll jump into the Intel story here. From our perspective, supplier diversity plays a very significant role. I know, Mahesh, you started with diversity and taking that leaf out of that, but supplier diversity with very specific goals around how much of business do we want to make with diverse suppliers, not only our direct suppliers, but their suppliers too. So making the whole stream diverse in some ways. So that is one part of it. The other is the responsible business in our alliance, and how do we kind of incorporate some of those governance diktats which are there, which is a beautiful framework which already exists, which reference point to that, and see how we can get some nuggets out of that and incorporate that into our overall supply chain perspective. And of course, globally, though we are not a manufacturing organization, but responsible minerals, the code of conduct with labor and things like that, all become, very binding to our suppliers and their suppliers. And finally, the supplier qualification process, it has a very, very important sustainability section under it. So sure. It's not, what is called optional. It is, you have to have it, even though you qualify as the best, skilled and best product or best service-based company ever. If you don't have the sustainability qualification, you will either be mentored through that, or you may just lose the chance. So that is the seriousness through which we go through our supply chain processes. Any other inputs on the supply chain? But I think the question was clear, so we did provide hopefully some insight into the question per se. So maybe we have time for one more question, and we will maybe tailor it for you, Mahesh, since this question has come with your name on it, right? So it says, how is India positioned to deliver ESG as a shared service to the headquarters, right? So.
That's interesting, Manas. We, for ourselves, when we were defining our CSR mission for the next 3 years, 4 years, we really gave ourselves two hats. We said we want to be the role model for what the group wants to achieve on its carbon footprint, on its diversity, etc. And we want to be an accelerator for the group where we can, in a very humble way. We are not that large, but where we can, we want to be an accelerator for the group. I would take 3 areas we've selected for where we want to make an impact. One is IT. We are a large part of the IT setup for the group, and we have done 2 things on IT. We started offering as a service, and we want to build it actually as a center of excellence. Our board has agreed to it, even if it's a small center of excellence. One is around green IT. So we took the tools we had for continuous delivery, etc., and adapted it. That not only do you test for integration, etc., when you're releasing a feature, but we also test the energy footprint. Not for all, but for some kind of applications. And now we are integrating that into our software factory so that every application automatically has and we came with a grading A to F, and everybody tries to go, it becomes easier and easier to go towards A and B. We also offer a service, saying not only will we assess it for you, but if you need to upskill it, we know the typical issues that can take you from F to A, we will do it for you. Continuing on IT, again, part of being a European setup, it's mandatory that your customer-facing, supplier-facing, public-facing applications are accessible for people with disabilities. So we came with a tactical solution. It's not fixing the architectural issues, but we came with a tactical solution, which very quickly, it's a kind of widget you can implement into any website, any application, and it has a lot of, especially for people with visual disabilities, the color blindness, the brightness. It gives a lot of things which suddenly your application becomes capable of doing very quickly. And this has been appreciated and applied in Germany, in some other countries already, because by the time you fix architectural issues, it's a big task. So you need to go fast first, and then you can fix architectural issues. So this is on the IT side. The second is what I call on sustainable banking. Our trade finance teams globally realize that they are really dealing with multiple countries, Africa, India, East Europe, Latin America, where multiple countries when they're financing, and any deal typically has 7, 8 intermediaries parties involved, other than the customer and the supplier. So while we set up systems and blockchains to kind of fix this, which will take time, they have asked us to set up a small, but it's a start. It's the first research team we have, where every trade finance deal, at least for Asia, goes through a complete vetting on the counterparties involved and whether there are any ESG exposures they have. So it's not just KYC or AML you talk about anymore. We start talking about ESG exposures, and we won't do the deal if it has an ESG exposure, as an example. Similarly, we have a research team which works as part of our wholesale business normally, the normal research team that any bank would have. But a part of their global research team is now focused on sustainability and sustainability indicators of investments we make. I'm glad to say that about 40% of that team is in India. Again, small teams, but 40% of that team is in India, right? So that's the second part I would say about it. And the third one is really around data and analytics. We are working with our car leasing company. We have a car leasing company, which is one of the largest in Europe. We are working with them to measure the commute footprints in a way and how to optimize that. These are all pilots, initial discussions. We are discussing with our retail banks in some parts of Europe, saying when you issue a bank statement, you issue a credit card statement. Now, this is not rocket science. Others have done it, but maybe we can help you. It's still at the very initial discussion stage to issue it along with a carbon footprint, not just a financial footprint as such. And of course, like every corporate, we have a lot of non-financial reporting to show that we're ESG compliant. And that program is being framed now, but clearly we are positioning ourselves to play a role to help the various parts of the group to produce the various metrics we have to, which are non-financial, but which are important for the group to demonstrate that we are respecting the commitments we have made. But I would call them baby steps, but these are 3 areas we've identified to work on. Some have progressed, some are at a discussion stage.
Thank you, Mahesh. That really gave us a great perspective. We have come to an end, and I thought we just started, right? It's been such an engrossing and, as this is disarmingly honest conversation that we have been having. One beautiful part about the whole sustainability topic is that nobody can say IP, right? Whatever we do is for the greater common good. So no IP, no holds barred. This has been a wonderful conversation, gentlemen. Thank you, Anzi. Thank you, Paddy. Thank you, Mahesh. Really appreciate it, and I'm sure our audience also enjoyed every bit of it. With this, I will hand it over to Anavi again, and thank you, gentlemen. Have a good day.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for a very riveting discussion, Paddy, Andy, Mahesh, and Manas. It's been a pleasure. I'd like to now once again invite back to the stage Manas Das, who will be joined by Jayan Desai, Director for Strategy and Business Operations at VMware India, to talk about a new initiative around ecosystem collaboration in sustainability. Manas, over to you.
Thank you, Anavi. It has been a great event till now, a bunch of exciting sessions. We went from technology to circular economy to startups and beyond. We can see that the spectrum is huge, right? There are possibilities and possibilities galore. We as Intel have been reaching out to the ecosystem in multiple ways, fellow travelers, audit companies, government agencies, all about collaborating, learning, and evolving through the process of this journey of our, espousing sustainability in everything that we do. As an outcome, as you're aware, we started the conclave last year, very well participated, and this year you've seen another version of the same. We've also built cohorts where specific topics have been discussed. We have created best practices sharing sessions where we have learned and kind of shared and in a lot of ways evolved our practices. The idea is to keep priming the ecosystem towards more aspects of sustainability. And also looking at all this and to enable us to work with the ecosystem deeper, better, and maybe for a higher collective impact. I am today, and Intel is happy to announce a partnership with VMware for a combined effort in sustainability with the theme of climate action. We look forward to our continued association with you in the ecosystem and everyone else. And I take great pleasure in handing this over to Jan from VMware to provide some of the details of this today, this arrangement and this collaboration that we're getting into. Jan, over to you.
Manas, thank you so much. And to everybody here, it's such a pleasure to be hearing what Manas just announced. And this is something, as Manas said, been in works for some time. As they say, right, the right minds with the right attitude can make that difference. And what better opportunity that we collectively come together to solve some of the problems that individually we haven't been that effective, or which cannot be isolated by one company taking it on. And this is the spirit behind this entire ecosystem connect. VMware, Intel, and the likes of all of you, it eventually become a formidable force. And there are three areas we would like to focus for very specific reasons. We don't want to boil the ocean, and neither we want to spread all of us quite thin. So one is tech for good. How can we leverage technology to solve large-scale problems at a proto to scale, or sometimes to work on solutions which haven't been thought through before? The second, and the most critical, is policy advocacy. For a growing economy with such a proactive government and some of the initiatives which all of us individually have been plugged in, how can we combine forces to represent the things in the right way, systematic, orderly, and a voice which counts? That's the spirit behind policy advocacy. And third, but the best part, how can we engage our vast employee base, passionate, interested, and willing to drive that little bit to make a change? Why can't we combine those forces? So that's the community engagement and work here with NGO partners, with trade bodies. We have thought through a few things, but collectively we can chew this further. And what me and Manas have been thinking is we will have a formal kickoff sometime soon where we can outline the priorities, the roadmap, and the engagement framework. That's the model. It's really a pleasure that this has been supported by management on both sides. I'm joined by Shalini, who is my co-lead on this. Ram Narayan, as you know him from the NASSCOM Product Council, and the entire India leadership team is behind this initiative. So really looking forward to working with Manas and Intel and the rest of you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Manas and Jan. I'm sure this is very inspirational to the Indian ecosystem. Folks, we urge you to join this movement. Please reach out to indiasustainability@intel.com for more details. With this, we come to the end of today's event. I'd like to invite Samuel Dorairaj, Manager for Business Operations at Intel India, to deliver the closing note for today. Samuel, over to you.
Thank you, Anavi. With this, we come to the end of the second edition of the Intel-Zinnov Sustainability Conclave. And I must say the conclave is getting bigger and better with each passing year. We're really glad you could join us for this event. When we started this discussion a couple of months ago, our aim was to have a bold theme, and there was complete consensus from the team when we chose circular economy and the impact across various vectors. Economic growth in emerging markets have helped raise the standards of living, but inevitably it has also generated massive consumer and industrial waste. Many municipal corporations in these markets spend close to half of their budgets on solid waste management. However, innovative business, on the other hand, look at circular economy principles, finding ways to convert this trash into income streams. And as we saw through the sessions today, there will be opportunities for us to work together and derive value through these models. Now, we had some amazing sessions, which was insightful from across the board with business leaders, technologists, sustainability leads on what it takes to build and scale sustainability. A huge thanks to our speakers for taking time and being with us today, starting with Gokul Subramaniam and Todd Brady from Intel, Federico Merlo from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, Niveda RM from TrashCon, Namita Adavi from Zinnov, Advait from Clean, the panelists, Manas Das, the moderator from Intel, Anzi Mohammed from SAP, Paddy from Bosch, Mahesh Patija from SocGen. We wanted to bring together diverse views from speakers in India and across the globe, and we were able to do justice to this. And it goes without saying that none of this would have been possible without the support of an amazing and strong team who put all of this together. And I'd really like to call upon SP Singh, Pratibha Nayak, Preeti S, Manjunath Gowda, Subramaniam R, Geeta Rao, Abhay Shetty, and from the Zinnov team, Faraz Mohammed, Anavi Pandey, Sonali Katokar, Namita Adavi, and Aishwarya. Thank you all for taking care of each and every detail. With that, folks, I thank you all for a great engagement, and I hope you have a wonderful day ahead. Stay safe and think green. Thank you.
Thank you, Samuel. Dear audience, I hope you've had a chance to look at all the booths that we have for you today and also have had a chance to make a pledge. Before we close, a quick note. I'm glad to inform you that we'll be planting 1,000 saplings as a token of our appreciation to all of the speakers and you, the audience that have joined us today. Thank you once again, everybody, for being a part of today's session. It's been a pleasure. Let's ensure that we all do our part in being sustainable and going green. Take care, stay safe, and have a lovely day ahead. Thank you.
At Intel India, we are committed to RISE, accelerating the adoption of responsible, inclusive and sustainable practices in our operations, supply chain, industry and society. Under the Intel India Sustainability Program, we pursue new ways to reduce emissions, conserve energy, recycle water and adopt renewable energy. Our metric-based dashboard measures initiatives across 7 vectors. Intel's first ever Sustainability Lab is a testing and certification unit to accelerate carbon-efficient engineering and responsible sourcing of minerals and raw materials. 70% plus of energy needs of Intel India are met through alternative energy sources. Intel is the first organization in India to set up a solid oxide fuel cell energy unit that displaces dependency on grid power. Solar panels meet 100% of our kitchen's cooling needs. All our buildings are LEED certified. Our robust waste management system enables generation of 3 tons of biogas through food waste alone. 15,000 plus sensors optimize power and temperature. Interactive walkway converts footsteps into off-grid electrical power. We use retreated water extensively on-site. Off-site, we have rejuvenated 2 lakes in Bangalore with expected restoration of 100 million gallons of water per annum. A third of our employees contributed 100,000 volunteering hours in the last 3 years for CSR activities. $25 million spent with diverse supply chain in 5 years. The first Intel India Sustainability Conclave in 2020 brought 60 plus organizations across industries together. In 2021, we had best practice sessions with 15 plus companies. Our efforts have won us recognitions. We are not resting on our laurels. Intel India recognizes the need to do more with greater urgency. And together, we can make a difference.